Okay, that takes you on to the second of today's hearings. This is item 6.3 and 6.4, Ravelrig Quarry, Long Dalmahoy Road, Kirk Newston. 6.3 is the protocol note, and the main application is at 6.4. I will hand over to planning officers to introduce.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Good morning, councillors. My name is James Armstrong, and I'm the case officer planning application 24/06100/FUL at Ravelrig Quarry. Before I begin, I need to make a verbal update to committee regarding recommended conditions 3, 4 and 5 as a result of a drafting error when writing the report. Condition 3 should be updated to remove reference to restrictions on drilling, as these operations are sufficiently controlled by Part A of Condition 2. Condition 4 needs to be updated in two ways. First, to refer to Condition 2 rather than Condition 3 in the first paragraph, and second, to alter Part B of the condition to refer to times out with normal operations and to refer specifically to plant machinery. As the goal of this provision, as outlined in the text explaining the requirement for this is part of Condition 4 in the report of handling, is to control noise with respect to quarry operations that may occur outside of normal working hours in the quarry. My apologies for this, it was my mistake when I included that. Condition 5 should be amended to fix a small typo that was addressed similarly in the previous hearing we had regarding replacing the word submission with emission in the text of the condition. To begin with a little site history.
Convener, apologies, point of order. Apologies, could we just get those clarifications in writing? Could they be emailed? They have been. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think Elaine is going to arrange for that to be the case.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So, yes. To begin with a little site history, Ravelrig Quarry operates subject to planning permission 08/00140/FUL currently, which was granted in 2010, permitting mineral extraction at the site until 2042. Rock extraction, including associated processing, is currently undertaken at the site with an average extraction rate of approximately 600,000 tonnes per year over the previous 10 years. Planning permission 08/0010/FUL relates to an area of approximately 57 hectares with a permitted extraction area of approximately 28.4 hectares. The application before you today is made under Section 42 of the 1997 Act, seeking to amend or remove conditions from planning permission, the previous planning permission 08/00140/FUL, specifically conditions 1, 10, 11, 15, 21, 34, 35 and 36 of the planning permission, that the application has withdrawn their proposals with respect to condition 10, which relates to ground vibrations. Whilst the applicant has specified what they would like the conditions to be altered to, committee may decide to alter or add new conditions as needed to ensure the application complies with the development plan. A large number of changes, additions, amendments and other alterations to the existing conditions, as well as new conditions, are recommended by the office report. Conditions have also been renumbered as appropriate, as necessary. I would refer committee to the appendix that was circulated as a reference document, setting out the proposed changes to the conditions in the context of the current conditions the applicant's proposed alterations. The current conditions Ravelrig Quarry operates under are on the left. The alterations to conditions proposed by the applicants are in the centre, and the conditions proposed in the officer's report are on the right. Conditions listed as 34 to 47 on the left are new conditions proposed by officers, given numbers in this column for ease of reference. Conditions will be renumbered as necessary, with the numbers on the far right column matching the condition numbers in the report of handling. The report of handling considers all aspects of the proposal and has recommended changes to all aspects of the conditions necessary to reflect the changed policy context since the operation of the quarry was granted in 2010. Any changes to the quarry's context and best practice as well. Planning Advice Note Pan 50, Annex D, controlling the environmental effects of surface mineral workings, additionally forms an important material consideration for your determination. Importantly, the Section 42 application currently under consideration needs to be seen in the context of the concurrent application for the extension of the quarry, which will be heard later this afternoon. As you will have noted, many of the documents provided in support of the current Section 42 application under consideration include reference to what is proposed as part of the concurrent application for the extension of the quarry to the south, due to clear links between the two proposals. However, for the avoidance of doubt, the Section 42 application currently being considered remains its own distinct application requiring a separate decision. Because of this, conditions 29 and 30 of the report have been drafted to cover for the eventuality that permission for the extension is not granted by committee later this afternoon, or for the eventuality that permission for the extension is not implemented. Efforts have been made to ensure a high degree of consistency amongst the recommended conditions between the two applications. This is the location plan provided by the applicant, with the red line representing the site under consideration, and the blue line representing land under the applicant's control. This is the site as existing, which provides a map of the site as existing, which provides you with the site's context. Ravelrig Quarry is located to the west of Edinburgh, approximately 450 metres to the west of Balerno, and 2 kilometres from Kirknewton, between the two towns. The quarry is surrounded on all sides by land of a rural character, featuring agricultural land as well as wooded and hilly terrain. The A70 is located to the site's south and southeast, and a railway line is to the site's north. The quarry entrance is via a private access road to the site's west, accessed via Long Down High Road. A gas pipeline is located approximately 60 metres to the south of the site, shown in orange on the map. Here are two views of the quarry basin, taken looking from the east to the west. Note in particular Dalmore here in the background, so that's the hill directly across from where the view is taken, and then Kames Hill to the left of that, and as well also the southern face of the quarry basin. The existing, this is the second photo, this is looking to the sort of northern face of the quarry basin as well. The existing quarry has been worked down to, around 145 metres above ordnance datum in the east and 130 metres AOD in the west. Rock extraction is undertaken by drilling and blasting. Electric fixed processing plant is located on the site, whilst an area to the north of the site includes a weighbridge, offices, a workshop, settling ponds, and settling ponds associated with the activities on the site. Apologies. Yeah, there we go. There are a number of residential properties nearby, including 582 Lanark Road, described as Hannahfield on the map, 48 Cassidy Wynd, located approximately at the red dot on the map, and Stable House, described as Garden Cottage on the map. The application site is partially within the designated Greenbelt area and partially within the designated countryside policy area. In addition, part of the site is located within the designated Dalmahoy Hill local biodiversity site and Ravelrig Quarry local geodiversity site, while the Water of Leith West and Penton special landscape areas are located to the south of the site across the A20. The site lies in close proximity to two scheduled ancient monuments, Dalmahoy Hill and Kames Hill. The Balerno Conservation Area is located to the site's east. This is the site sort of as proposed in the extension, although you'll note that this application relates solely to the quarry basin in the middle. For the sake of keeping my presentation to a reasonable length, I do not propose to go through all of the changes proposed by the conditions. I would ask Councillors to refer to a report of handling for these. Instead, I'll focus on three areas: amenity, restoration, and climate change. Before proceeding any further, though, for the benefit of those with less commonly involved with the planning system who may be observing, it is worth highlighting the 6 key tests which all planning conditions must meet. Planning Circular 1998/4 states that planning conditions may only be used where they are necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, and reasonable in all other aspects. This is to ensure that, whilst the power of the planning authority to impose conditions is very wide, it needs to be exercised in a manner that is fair, reasonable, and precise. The first major component of neighbouring amenity that may be impacted is noise. Whilst it is noted that it is reasonable to expect a degree of noise impact, this is to be controlled in order to mitigate amenity impacts. There are a number of noise-sensitive properties which are identified as being particularly impacted by existing and future operations that I've just shown you. That is 582 Lanark Road, 48 Cassidy, and Stable House. I've put the relevant map back on the screen now for the councillor's reference, just for you to take a look at. Pan 50 covers the topic of noise extensively, recommending that noise impacts from the quarry operation should not result in background noise levels exceeding 55 decibels at nearby noise-sensitive properties, as this is considered by the guidance to be a tolerable noise level. That said, the irrelevant existing condition, condition 15 in your papers as existing, does not accord with PAN guidance, Annex A. The applicant therefore initially requested an amendment requiring noise emitted from the quarry during daytime hours to not exceed the higher of background levels plus 10 decibels or 45 decibels free field as recorded in any existing noise-sensitive residential property. However, the amended condition as recommended by the applicant potentially exposes nearby sensitive receptors to higher levels of daytime noise than would be acceptable. The application's NIA states that in a worst-case scenario, the quarry operations will not result in noise that exceeds levels that are lower than this, with the exception of at 582 Lanark Road, where there is a more nuanced situation as set out in the report of handling. It is therefore proposed to amend the condition to restrict noise levels to noise to levels resulting from normal quarry operations during daytime hours to the worst-case scenario predictions of the NIA at each of the representative neighbouring properties, as this is considered to be the minimum practical level, balancing amenity impacts and the economic working of the site. With respect to noise created outside of normal operations, the proposed condition 4B requires noise to be compliant with NR 25 between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Monday to Saturday, and between 4 p.m. on Saturday to 7 a.m. on Monday. It is recognised that certain necessary temporary operations, such as the moving of overboard and topsoil, are not practicable if restricted by the noise limits specified in the proposed condition 4A. Therefore proposed to continue to provide for these activities by enabling higher noise tolerances for short-term periods, applying Part C of Condition 4. Moving to discuss ground vibration, this needs to be controlled in order to mitigate amenity impacts to neighbours, and are currently achieved at Ravelrig Quarry by Condition 10, which limits ground vibration resulting from blasting to a peak particle velocity, or PPV, of 2.5 millimetres per second in any plane as measured at or near the two nearest residential properties. A person will generally become aware of blast-induced vibration at levels of around 1.5 millimetres per second minus 1 ppv, although, as PAN 50 notes, concern normally relates to the vibration's potential for causing damage to complainant's property. British standards describe guidance values above which damage has been credibly demonstrated, the threshold for cosmetic damage being 15 millimetres per second minus 1 ppv. PAN 50 notes minor damage to structures is possible at vibration magnitudes greater than twice that for cosmetic damage, and major damage at values greater than 4 times that for cosmetic damage values. These values apply even when a structure experiences repeated vibration events. Whilst the degree of public interest in levels of ground vibration resulting from blasting is understood, it is noted that the applicant has withdrawn their initial proposed alterations to the PPV limit at the site, the current 2.5 millimetres per second PPV limit contained in Condition 10 is likely counterproductive to residential amenity and other environmental concerns, requiring a greater number of blasting events to produce the same extraction rate than if the PPV limit was set higher, with resultant negative amenity impacts that would not occur if a higher limit in line with PAN 50 is applied. The impact of the greater number of blasting events required on neighbouring amenity therefore also needs to be considered, and as such a higher PPV limit, as recommended by PAN 50, of 6 millimetres per second in 95% of cases, with no individual cases of greater than 12 millimetres per second, is recommended to be applied. This is considered the level that best balances the practical working of the quarry, with minimising potential amenity impacts to residents. Moving to discuss air overpressure, handily explained on the slide I'm showing you now as being energy emitted from a blast within the atmosphere through pressure waves. This similarly needs to be controlled in order to protect residential neighbouring amenity. The current condition 13 of planning of the permission that covers permits the operation of the site at the minute, 08/00140/FUL, states overpressure arising from blasting at the site were minimised by good blasting practices. This condition should be reviewed by the planning operator and head of planning 1 year after date consent. Other quarries in Edinburgh have used specific air overpressure limits to control amenity impacts. However, PAN 50 advises against this. The use of a nominal limit is problematic because of difficulties accurately measuring air overpressure. PAN 50 states, due to the unpredictable and uncontrollable effects of prevalent atmospheric conditions, the location at which the maximum air overpressure is expected cannot be determined with any degree of accuracy. Demonstration of compliance with specific air overpressure limit is not a practical possibility. In applying a condition controlling air overpressure, the planning authority also needs to be cognizant of recent appeal decisions, particularly at Bonington Mains Quarry, where the reporter determined the condition applying 120 decibel limit as an existing condition needs to be replaced, as it was not in line with the test of the circular. Or the specific guidance of PAN 50 on the matter. It is therefore recommended to apply a similar condition to the one required by the reporter on the appeal decision in this circumstance. The proposed condition 9 requires the submission of blast method statement detailing how ground vibration and air overpressure would be minimised considering PAN 50, and requires details of blast notification, monitoring measures, and a complaints procedure to be followed. Regarding restoration, on the slides now is the proposed concept restoration plan. The proposal is to require the applicant via condition 12 to first submit a restoration and aftercare scheme to the planning authority for approval, and then to implement the approved scheme within 24 months of the cessation of operations. The scheme to be provided to be in broad accordance with the concept restoration scheme on the slide, and the applicant is there and then to undertake aftercare of the site. The scheme attempts to integrate the quarry into the wider landscape whilst enhancing biodiversity and providing public access to the site. The landform on the eastern side of Dalmoy Hill is to be recreated. Grassland habitats are to be created. Native woodland is to be planted, and paths to be created linking the local footpath network. The quarry basin is to be allowed to flood, forming a new lake, featuring a diverse range of habitats. Works to be undertaken progressively to achieve this as rock extraction at the quarry progresses. I won't pass through the details of this right now, as the progression of the landforms in and surrounding the quarry are well described in the submitted drawings. However, I will quickly pass over the submitted restoration phasing plans over the next few slides. So here you have the quarry as existing. Here you have the quarry as the final restoration plan as proposed that I've just shown you previously. Here you have phase 1. This phase is to be undertaken progressively and is anticipated to last approximately 6 to 9.5 years. This is phase 2, anticipated to last approximately 5.5 to 8.5 years. And this is phase 3, anticipated to last approximately 4 to 6 years. This is again the final restoration plan. Conditions 12 and 13 include provision for restoration aftercare of the site, requiring the creation of habitats, landscape planting, seeding, the interpretation and marking out of a continuing line of the historic parish boundary, and contains provision that the landscaping scheme is to be undertaken progressively as the extraction of the quarry progresses. Additional matters, including landscaping, tree planting, biodiversity and protected species, have been covered by conditions 12, 13, 14, 16 and 17. Conditions 14 contains provision with respect to additional landscape screening and the alteration of the shape and form of bunding to ensure that they more effectively blend into the existing landscape character. Conditions 16 and 17 contain provision with respect to additional tree planting to offset tree loss and the provision of appropriate supporting documentation. Conditions 27 and 28 contain provision with respect to protected species and biodiversity, requiring ecological mitigation and enhancement strategy to be submitted and approved, and a habitat management plan and habitat management and maintenance plan to be submitted and approved. Finally, it's worth explaining one of the main sustainability impacts of the application: climate change impacts. MPF 4 Policy 1 requires that when considering all development proposals, significant weight will be given to the global climate and nature crises. Policy 2A of NPF4 requires that development proposals be cited and designed to minimise greenhouse gas emissions as far as possible. Apologies. The production and processing of aggregate and similar products by its nature is by its nature an energy intensive activity. However, it is noted that NPF4 noted in NPF4 as making an essential contribution to the Scottish economy. The transportation of these products is similarly intensive and requires significant energy. Ravelrig Quarry features existing fixed plant powered by mains electricity and is located within a relatively close proximity to where many of the products produced at the quarry are likely to be consumed, resulting in aggregates produced at the Ravelrig Quarry having a comparatively low carbon footprint compared with aggregate produced in an average quarry. Further details are given in the report of handling based upon the supporting documentation provided in the EIA. In conclusion, the application is considered to be in accordance with the LDP, NPF4 and PAN 50, subject to the conditions as recommended. Specifically, conditions to sufficiently limit impact on neighbouring amenity and require updated information with respect to restoration where necessary, and to make provision for the eventuality that the quarry extension to be discussed later today is either refused or otherwise not implemented are made. The proposal gives appropriate regard to the climate crisis. No other material considerations outweigh this conclusion. It is recommended that the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Armstrong, for your very detailed presentation. Yes, Ms. Gamble.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. I think there was reference from James about an appendix of conditions. I've just circulated that round everybody.
Okay. I was just about to cover that, but thank you. So, opening up to questions from committee. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, convener, and thank you again for your presentation. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Armstrong. May I just seek a point of clarification, please, on that over air pressure? It was very detailed. I got a bit lost. It was quite complex. But are you actually saying that it cannot be actually, we do not actually know the point at which the greatest impact is, you can't actually measure that?
So air overpressure is a complex area discussed extensively in the Planning Advice Note Guidance 50. The issue is essentially that when you do a blast, a large amount of pressure waves will be emitted from that blast into the atmosphere. It's very difficult to actually measure and control for the degree of impact at a specific point that will be received by a sensitive receptor, so a neighbouring resident, because that depends on factors such as the wind direction and the cloud coverage at that point in time. PAN 50 advises specifically against including decibel limits, specific decibel limits, because of this reason, because they couldn't be measured and therefore it makes them unenforceable, essentially. Therefore, the recommendation is that we have a blasting method statement be submitted by the applicant to control as best as possible those impacts to neighbours. I believe we've previously discussed this at committee a couple of times now, most recently at Hillwood Quarry and then previously to do with Bonington Mains. You'll be aware of the relevant appeal decision. This was the solution recommended by the reporter in the appeal decision. We've tried to emulate that in where we've with this condition that was being recommended to apply it. Thank you.
Convener, I think just to summarise that the clear advice to you would be not to apply a specific decibel limit to air overpressure in light of the advice in the PAN and your appeal decision at Bonington Mains, where the reporter basically required a blasting method statement to be submitted, not an actual specific 120 decibel limit.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. I'm sure we might get into this when we hear from communities as well, but I wondered about conditions 10 and 11. If the request is still being made to change them, so I understand that we've been sent a document that says that these are no longer being requested to be changed. So I just wondered if there are other reasons for changing them other than the applicant's request, I suppose. Thanks.
So, as noted in PAN 50, maybe to start better. The applicant has withdrawn the request to change conditions 10. I'm not sure about condition 11. My understanding was it was only condition 10 that was withdrawn. However, they may be able to clarify when they come up. That was my understanding of the email that was sent, but there we go. My recommendation, however, would be that we apply a condition that's in line with PAN 50. PAN 50 is quite clear that if you have a lower PPV limit set, that results in having a larger number of blasts needing to be done to result in a specific extraction rate. And you need to balance the number of blasts that are happening, of course, against their sort of the PP limit that would be may result at sensitive receptors. If you have a high limit, it enables a lower number of blasts to be held and therefore less amenity impact. That would be my assessment of the situation.
Okay, any further questions from committee? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hodgson, yes.
You did cover this, and the applicant, I'm sure, will cover it too when we get to that. But I am confused as to the relationship between the two applications that are before us today. Are we saying that these changes to conditions would be necessary to facilitate the extended operations? What is the relationship between the two matters? I'm kind of confused around that.
Convener, if I could maybe explain it and hopefully simplify it, albeit I do appreciate that it's highly complicated and it's difficult for people to understand. But what you've basically got is you've got a quarry that's got an existing planning permission. So that exists and they're entitled to go on with that. The section 42 that's in front of you is to amend the conditions on that planning permission. And the simple way of looking at it is you can either grant it with the same conditions, which is tantamount to refusal, grant it subject to no conditions, which clearly you wouldn't do given it being a quarry, or you can grant it subject to other conditions. And I think in terms of our other conditions, what we've tried to look at is make sure that they're as much as possible compliant with the advice in PAN 50, but also compliant with the decision that was made by the reporter on the section 42 application for Bonington in terms of consistency of wording and various different levels that are set out in those. So that's the first application that's in front of you, and that stands alone. If you refuse planning permission for that, it doesn't remove the fact they've already got an extant planning permission, which they're entitled to continue implementing. The second application, which will be coming up after this, is a distinct application to extend the quarry. And our view was that really the appropriate thing to do would be to consider the section 42 for the first application first, before you then go on and consider the section, the application to extend the quarry. It's a distinct application in its own right. Now, it might have been nicer to have it all in as one application, and it might have been easier for us to deal with it that way, but there are fee implications with that in terms of section 42 fees and fees for areas. But equally, the other key issue is that that could potentially expose the applicant to a risk that if they just put it in as one and it got refused, that they hadn't actually got the conditions for the existing quarry updated, if that makes sense. So that's why it's come in as two. And in terms of having the two hearings this afternoon, the reason for that is that's because they are two distinct applications, they have to be considered separately. But equally, it's also a learning outcome that I think came out of a stage 2 complaint investigation that we had looked into the original Bonington applications a couple of years ago, and we took the view that it had to come in as two separate hearings as such. But I hope that clarifies what, unfortunately, is a fairly complex issue.
Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. It sort of follows on from that, and thank you for that explanation. And it's about the mound, so previous condition 21. And again, that's in this sort of odd little bit in that the new application that we're not considering just yet removes that mound. But if that application isn't approved, we still want the mound protections to exist, I presume. So I guess if you can just confirm my reading of it, I suppose. So the proposal from officers is that we are replacing this by new condition 31. and also the tree planting is being replaced by new condition 12. So can you confirm that if this application is approved but the next application is not, that the mound will still have the protections, both in terms of its form and in terms of its tree and shrub planting? Thanks.
Yes, so the intention would be that, I think, unfortunately, there's a small error in the appendix that we've got, so it refers to it being condition 31, it's been replaced, it's actually condition 30. Various different changes in the drafting process have gone on in putting these documents together. The mound will be maintained, essentially, if the extension is not granted this afternoon, later on.
Sorry, just a clarification. So thank you, that's really helpful. That makes sense. And thank you for the appendix, it's super helpful and I can appreciate how errors would sneak in. So that condition just talks about the, I suppose, existence of the mound, and then the trees and shrubs, that's covered in 12, which is that's just broader biodiversity, but that would still apply to the mound if it, yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, have we finished questions from committee? Yes.
So we'll now move on to hear from representatives and consultees. Can I invite representatives from Balerno Community Council and Ravelrig Quarry Group to come forward, please? So thank you all. We'll hear firstly from the Community Council and then from Ravelrig Quarry Group. So if you could just introduce yourself before you speak and use the microphone, press the button on the microphone to,
we're on. Okay.
to speak. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. It's still morning. Thank you very much for hearing us. I hope I'm not going to take long. You'll probably shut me up if I do. This application involves complex technical issues. The Community Council are neither geologists nor quarry masters, and our experience in planning has not ordinarily extended to quarrying. To the extent that in our comments we addressed technical issues, we realised that we were dealing in matters outside our knowledge and experience. What we thought we did recognise, however, was that there could, in the matter of this complexity, be diverging opinions. What we sought to do was to draw attention to that rather than seek to prefer one view to another. There are competing opinions in various areas on technical reports from parties on both sides of the argument. We cannot adjudicate, and we do not seek to adjudicate on them. We simply sought to convey that, therefore, any report by representatives of one party should, if followed, be treated with some caution. This has, however, been translated, I'm afraid, by the in the planning advice sent to Development Management Committee to suggest that we were saying that the Gears report was unreliable. That would suggest a wholly different nuance, was not what we were saying, and is certainly not our view. So what are we saying? What do we want to happen? First of all, we do not seek the ending of 200-year record of quarrying in Balerno, nor do we think that is what the Balerno community want. What we do seek is that if quarrying is to continue at Ravelrig, then it should occasion only the absolute minimum of nuisance to the community. It should be, if you like, unnoticeable. We know that some Balerno residents are unaware that there is currently any quarrying in the area. That may simply be a tribute to the manner in which the Ravelrig operation is being conducted at present by Tarmac and their consultants, Gears. It may not always have been that way. What Tarmac have done and invested a lot in monitoring, blasting and engaging with the community In reality, there is no reason, in our view, why quarrying should be a nuisance to anyone in our community. The aim in our comments was to convey that the community did not actively want an end to quarrying, but what they did actively want was that their houses should not shake. Vibration may be, as a matter of fact, be explained by air overpressure, but that doesn't immediately seem logical to someone who feels the ground shake after an explosion. We do struggle to accept that air overpressure is the source of apparent vibration. It might be thought unlikely that air overpressure might move foundations and crack walls unless at extremely high levels. But in one sense, it really doesn't matter to the community how the vibration is caused, provided it stops. We were very surprised, I was going to say gobsmacked, but that might not be the right word, when Tarmac, through Stephen Cowan, told the Community Council only on the 3rd of April that he intended to withdraw the request for variation of Condition 10 for an increase in vibration limits. In his note to the committee, he says, in these circumstances, I've decided to withdraw the elements of Section 42 application that proposed an increase in the maximum PPV from that currently in force. That seemed pretty clear. So there was, therefore, subsequently a certain frustration on discovering that the recommendation before the committee today included a revised Condition 10 as Condition 6, but still with an uplift in allowable PPV. I'm not going to read what it says. The key to this probably lies, however, in the view that PAN 50 is mandatory, meaning that higher maximum limits must be stated. But we do wonder at a system which can bypass the stated wishes of the applicant, Tarmac, and impose a condition which, implicitly, they have said they don't need because, as they concerned in their letter of 7th April, blasting conditions, operations, including any extension, can continue to operate within the currently approved levels. We think there's also something inconsistent in rejection or refusal of Tarmac's withdrawal of the request for variation of Condition 10. That is because of the statement in the recommendation that the PPV limits set out in the condition are considered the level that best balances the practicable working of the quarry with minimising the potential amenity impacts to residents. That suggests that there is a discretion to be exercised under PAN 50, and where better to exercise it than when the applicant has specifically withdrawn a request for an increase. If PAN 50 is mandatory, then why argue the benefits? So what do we do now? Our experience of both Tarmac and Gears in the conduct of this process, including the pre-application process, has been positive. Residents have reported an improvement in impact of blasting since Tarmac and Gears started a fairly extensive and expensive programme of monitoring. If things went on as they are at present, then the community would, we think, be satisfied. Regardless of the decision on PPV, we think a good neighbour agreement with Tarmac is also the best way forward. As part of that, there would be a liaison group which should include residents who've been affected by the Ravelrig operation. We think that such an arrangement, including community liaison, can deliver an operation in which the quarry can run and the community could be substantially oblivious to it.
I'm afraid to say you have actually gone over your time. If I could ask you to conclude, please.
1 minute. While we do not think that a planning condition for a liaison group will in fact be necessary, given the attitude of Tarmac and Gears as expressed to us on 3rd April, it would, we think, be of benefit to the community if they could see that commitment set out in such a condition. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I ask again, I'm sorry, you didn't introduce yourself to begin with, so are you...
I'm sorry?
Could I just ask for your name? Because
My name is Richard Henderson. I'm sorry I didn't
Thank
give
you
it to
very much. If you'd like to switch off your microphone now. And I believe that we now have Ravelrig Quarry Group, Andrew Clark, is that correct?
Madam Chair and Councillors, my name's Andrew Clark and I represent Ravelrig Quarry Group. I'm a retired Chartered Civil Engineer and a Chartered IT professional specialising in the construction industry. I started the group in December 2021 and have in the past 12 months been responsible for engagement with Tarmac and its advisors to monitor blasting effects in our local neighbourhoods of Ravelrig Park, Ravelrig Hill and Lanark Road West. I want to make it clear at this point that our group is not campaigning to stop the quarrying operation, only to protect the value of our homes. The country needs roadstone to fill our ever-increasing potholes, build our roads and other infrastructure. I will keep this simple and try not to baffle you with science, as some aspects of the subject matter are quite technical, as Richard alluded to. Members of our group have provided access to their homes and gardens to permit Tarmac's advisors gears to install equipment to monitor ground vibrations and air overpressure during blasts at the quarry. Unless otherwise agreed, I have undertaken not to disclose residential addresses, hence the large blobs on my maps. We have been concerned in particular about a proposed increase in the size of blasts in the very individual context of our Ravelrig area, as many of our homes are located directly above the layer of very hard quartz dolerite rock being blasted. I don't know if the PowerPoint has stopped running. Is it possible to keep it going?
We paused it temporarily because it's been through several times. We've looked at all four. I think we're just trying to work out if we can actually fix it rather than it consistently going through.
Okay. I just wanted to, at this point, to identify the fact that we are sitting on top of a shelf of rock. This extends 3 to 4 kilometres to the southeast of the quarry, right down to Balaurna village. The existing planning consents allow vibration levels of up to 2.5 millimetres per second peak particle velocity, or PPV for short, and this application was originally to have allowed an increase in that limit up to 12 millimetres per second. We have nevertheless taken a collaborative rather than adversarial approach to resolving our concerns with the quarry operator. This approach has culminated in the formal withdrawal by Tarmac in their letter to CEC planners of the 7th of April of the request to increase the vibration limit. It has also led to agreement of a memorandum of understanding on Monday of this week between Tarmac and our group together with Balaurna Community Council that addresses our detailed concerns in full. It is a matter of some concern that the Tarmac letter of withdrawal has not been highlighted here, and that the report to this committee refers in its summary on page 3 under description of development only to a change in blasting hours of operation. I quote, "The applicant had originally also requested to vary condition 10, brackets, blasting hours of operation, close brackets, however has now opted to withdraw this aspect of their proposal. It seems to us that councillors might be misled into thinking this is a minor modification of working hours rather than the momentous change in plan that it surely is in relation to blasting limits. I recommend that you ensure a copy of this letter is made available to you if it hasn't been already, and that you consider today simply maintaining the status quo on PPV consents at the original level rather than the increase still recommended by your planners despite withdrawal by the applicant. Just in case this important letter has been mislaid, fear not, I sent a copy earlier this morning to your AV team, who I hope can now show it to us. Real soon now, eh? There we go. If we can scroll up and just zoom in on the paragraphs 2, 3 and 4, that would be very helpful. Is it possible to zoom in so people can see what? Yes. So, in this context, I have to pay tribute to Tarmac and its advisors for their very cooperative approach in dealing with us. As a consequence, we are setting up through the auspices of Balaurna Community Council a Ravelrig Quarry Community Liaison Group, which will meet the quarry operator regularly to discuss any issues. We are also willing to register this with the Council as a good neighbour agreement. The bits that I hope you can see on screen make it quite clear that the withdrawal is on condition 10, which is all about PPV, nothing whatsoever to do with blasting hours. So
I'm afraid to say you're actually over time, so I would ask if you could come to conclusion, please.
I will do just straight away. So in light of the above, our group will be withdrawing formally its objections to expansion of the quarry, with the singular exception of the increase in PPE limit. Councillors, I hope that you'll consider this as an exception to the appeal and will proceed, unless otherwise agreed in writing with the Planning Authority, ground vibration resulting from blasting shall not exceed 2.5 millimetres. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So opening up questions to committee. Councillor Jones, remember one question, and please identify who it is that you're asking the question on. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. My question is for Mr. Clark. And I started to do some research about impact on vibrations from explosions, from blasts. And I was just wondering, are you aware of any independent study which you can bring to support the statements that you're making as evidence?
I think there is evidence in the Gears report, advisors to Tarmacs, who said that you can't detect vibrations above, below 1.5 millimetres per second. I think that was introduced at the start today. We can detect them. The average vibration is 1.25 millimetres per second, and most of my members of my team can detect that. So there's something wrong with the logic there.
Thank you. Councillor Mowat.
Yeah, obviously the rationale that's been presented to us is fewer, bigger blasts. So how many blasts are there at the moment that you are aware of, and the monitoring equipment, which has been helpfully put in place, are aware of? So just to give committee an indication of what we're talking about.
So at the moment, we have about 1 blast per month throughout the year. If you were to allow 5 times the charge and rate, then we would probably have 1 huge blast every 6 months. And we really don't want that.
Okay, is there any further questions from committee? No?
Madam Chairman, may I put a point on that last question?
I'm
Thomas from the Learning Community Council.
I'm afraid the question was asked, obviously, towards the other gentleman. So I think the question has been answered. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. And thanks very much for the comments. It's really nice to see that there is a positive relationship happening and some communication. And great to hear you're withdrawing mostly your objections. I had a question around you mentioned in your letter the 107 objections. This is for the Community Council. Would you say they are all or largely around this issue of condition 10? Were there other things that, as Community Council, you've been charged to sort of bring to us?
I haven't had access to
I think the question is actually to the Community Council.
Oh, I thought it was me, sorry.
Would you like to switch your microphone on, please? And would you like to switch your microphone off? Thank you.
As far as we're aware, there is no great groundswell of opposition within Bologna. There is opposition to the idea of vibration shaking your house. People may not have articulated that as a reason for the objection. Some people may have objected on the basis that it is simply a quarry, and the quarry may be a bad thing and may be potentially noxious, therefore we don't want it. We are not aware, as I say, of a groundswell of opposition to the quarry, and we would rather it was operated in a manner which is consistent with people's right to live quietly in Bologna.
Thank you. So, is there any further questions from committee? No? Thank you all very much indeed. If you just wouldn't mind switching off the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to hear from ward councillors. Could I invite any ward councillors that we have in the gallery to come forward, please? So just Councillor Gardner, thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, and hello again, convener and committee. And again, thanks very much for having this as a hearing today. It's quite important to hear from communities. And so I'm not going to give you any sort of technical information as such, what Andrew Clark has done, and obviously Richard Henderson has a legal background and so on. But I just wanted to give the view of the community, and I think Richard has summed it up really, that there may have initially been some concern about the quarry development, the changing conditions, and also the extension of the quarry. But having worked very well with Tarmac, they now want this one ask of committee, and that would be to look at condition 10 and see if committee's minded to go with it as it currently is and not increase it to the 6. And the PAN 50, Richard's interpretation of that is that it does allow a degree of flexibility in the wording of that. So it's not, doesn't have to be 6, it can vary that. So that's maybe something you can engage with officers to see if that is in fact the case. And I think there's a further application obviously after this one, and the Community Council is again not objecting to that on the basis that the variation of conditions for this one, condition 10 is looked at, then they don't have a problem, I believe, with the second application. What for councillors' information, there's also going to be and you'll hear from Tarmac, I believe, as well, planning obligations and good neighbour agreement was the regulations. So the memorandum of understanding that's being put forward and agreed on Monday yesterday may be then registered with the council, and it might be, I don't think, because the council's conditions might be well, it depends where you go on this with that condition 10, whether you choose to keep it as it is, 2.5 PV, or go for the 6. But it may be useful to have a council officer attend those groups as required by the community council. So they may meet more regularly, but it would be quite good to bring the council into the picture as well. So that's something maybe that you could also consider, and whether that's something that can be done. So I know you've had a lot to think about today already, and you may want to debate that condition 10, but I think that's largely from me. There is a variance of views. Some people are opposed to the quarry. Some people have worked with the quarry group, and others are actually not even aware of the quarry. It just depends where you live in Balerno because of the rock that runs through the village. If you're sitting above it, you feel the vibration and the shake, and it's the shake that the people want to get rid of because it could impact on their dwellings. They certainly feel it, and there's allegedly some cracks and so on. So that's what the ask's all about, convener and committee. So thanks very much for your time, and if you've got any questions, I'll try and answer them from a non-technical place.
Is there any questions on committee? No? You're free to go, Councillor Gardner.
Convener, if I could just issue a clarification. I think the reference in the last submissions to condition 10, it's actually condition 6 that's on your paper, so there's no confusion over the suggested peak particle velocity condition.
It's 10 in your schedule of conditions because it was the previous number 10 and it's a new number 6 before we get any questions with the applicant, just so we're clear. It was a 10 and it's now a 6 on the paper.
Okay.
Okay, could I invite the applicants to come forward, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and members for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Stephen Cowan. I'm a chartered surveyor and I'm a chartered environmentalist. I've looked after Tarmac's property and planning in Scotland for nearly 28 years. And I take a long-term interest and a personal responsibility in my company's environmental performance and in our community interaction. So as you've heard, you've got two applications for the quarry today, which is something of a technicality, and it might be worth me just confirming it again. One, because the stone in the currently permitted area will soon be exhausted, and Tarmac want to keep the quarry going by extending the area, but that's this afternoon's application. But because all quarry consents have got a condition with a time limit on them, we need to move our time limit on what we've got. That's as simply as I can put that. When we do that first one, the one that we're dealing with just now, the officers rightly take the opportunity to modernise conditions. But for us, it's the time and modernisation, and we don't seek to dilute or reduce anything. But as you've heard, the two do go hand in hand. And I think because of that, I'll firstly confirm some brief but key backdrops to the bigger picture. How good rock can only be worked in a few places where it's found, meets the surface. And that's why there's been significant quarries here since the early 19th century. Current quarry has one of the lowest carbon footprints in the UK, so it's an important resource for Edinburgh, both in terms of maintenance and also growth. The proposed extension will maintain local supply for 24 more years. There'll be no increase in output or vehicles or internal activity level. The design deliberately doesn't go any closer to Balerno, and critically, for today's decision, it meets planning policy. But, as with many, if not most, schemes of this sort, I recognise that there are going to be community concerns, and here they are almost entirely focused, as you've heard, on one aspect, the blasting limits, and I need to give you a short backstory to that and address that particular thing. Could I have some water, please, John? I'll address some of the bigger things about the extension this afternoon, briefly. So the current limit on ground vibration at Ravelrig is 2.5 millimetres per second. It's lower than any I've seen in Scotland or across the UK. I don't think any exist. We usually blast once a month, as you've heard, and since this limit was imposed in 1986, Tarmac's complied every time, month after month. Now, I'm not aware of many complaints over the years, but I am aware of some. There might be others I'm not aware of. But that's despite meeting this low limit. There've been a few complaints. And a few years ago, your council followed up on one, employing an independent expert to measure vibration for themselves. They confirmed that the limit was indeed being met, and in fact, the vibration levels were generally... Can I stop just for 1 second and get Teams back online? Oh, sorry. You can drink, Steve. Thank you. Oh, the clock stopped.
Apologies for those online. The screens have gone down within, obviously, Dean of Guilds, so we're just rejigging, and we will be convening again in a moment.
Great. Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying a few years ago, your council followed up on a complaint and employed an independent expert to measure the vibration themselves. And they confirmed that the limit was indeed being met, and in fact that the vibration levels were often so low that the machinery wasn't even triggering. But the outcome for residents, that was really just something of a dead end. And I can understand that must have been frustrating for them. Now, a short time later, one local resident, retired engineer, Andrew Clark, happened to attend a presentation given by the Geological Society, and the talk was on evolving insights into blasting and was given by Thomas Clifford of Gears, sitting next to me today. And our neighbour liked what Tom had to say and asked if he could have a look at Ravelrig Quarry. This didn't come cheap, but I, or rather Tarmac, agreed for Tom to fund Tom to carry out investigations. And as a result of that, Gears, that's Tom, have now carried out nearly 2 years of monitoring. They've imported some state-of-the-art equipment from Canada, I believe. They've met residents. They've trialled new monitoring techniques and positions, and interestingly, they've measured inside and outside people's houses. And lastly, but also importantly, they've surveyed the human experience. So the researchers get 3 outcomes as I group them. One is simply that working closer alongside residents has built better understanding and confidence in both the process and the results. 2, with ground vibration so low, I think everyone has agreed that there's not the slightest prospect of damage to anyone's homes. And Gears are continuing to carry out research on that point around the UK, so we have the benefit of a very wide data bank there. Gears have inspected several houses in Balerno and confirmed that there's no evidence of blast damage at all. Now, there are, of course, some of the cracks that we all have in our houses for other reasons. Now, 3, and this is probably the one that's most interesting, is that the community feedback on the scale of each blast, as experienced, doesn't correlate with higher ground vibration. And instead, the evidence aligns, as Tom finds it, with the air blast acting in buildings and then felt through the floors. It isn't strong when it's measured, but it's sudden and surprising. Now, that's as technical as I propose to get today, and I accept that that feels really counterintuitive for some people, and I don't want to downplay anyone else's description or their opinion of what's happening. What I will say is that that's the evidence that Tom found, and over the last couple of years, Tarmac have been acting to address that very point and mitigate that particular effect, and the residents do report a significant improvement. Perhaps there's some proof in the pudding there. So, in the application that you've got just now, Tarmac included the vast amount of work that Gears carried out, which goes far beyond anything in a normal EIA, and Tarmac followed its recommendation to increase the maximum vibration limit only to those recommended by the Scottish Government, on the evidence that a small increase in vibration should not be noticeable, but that further improvements in air overpressure would be beneficial. I was in contact with the local quarry group and I carried out kind of wider consultation, but unfortunately, and with hindsight perhaps understandably, only a few others got into the detail and news effectively circulated. On the face of it, Tarmac simply wanted to relax limits and increase effects, and objections were lodged on that basis. Hopefully, from everything you've heard today, you'll appreciate that my intention has been the opposite and my proposal. And had Tarmac not wished to improve the residents' experience, the company could just have stuck with the historical limit and wouldn't have had to spend a great deal of time and money. Given the technical nature of things, I probably should have expected that this was always going to be a longer term conversation. And I think Richard Henderson, the chair of Balerno Community Council, put it reasonably in his formal response back in January. And he said, BCC does not object to the continuation of the quarry or its extension. On the matter of changing blast limits, it's for Tarmac to make a compelling case, and they have not done so. So I accepted that. And it's important to Tarmac to work with the community. And as I said earlier, I believe that confidence in the process also matters. So I confirmed I would withdraw the proposal, and I did so. Subsequently, your officers issued the report with the vibration limit of 6. I'm fully in line with the Scottish Government and the reporter's thing, and Both Tom and I believe that that offers scope to continue improvement in the blast experience with no noticeable downsides. After all, that's why we proposed it. But, and I could have left it at that, I want to respect the community review view. I don't want to dilute my commitment to do what we said we'd do. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been working with the two groups to draft a memorandum of understanding which aims to give the community various assurances, confirm best practice, formalise ongoing liaison with reporting and complaint handling, and critically, it includes a commitment to work within existing vibration levels, regardless of planning conditions, unless and until more confidence is built and people are comfortable with a change or an increase. And we're, as someone mentioned, we're exploring how this might evolve into a planning vehicle, which is new to me, called a good neighbour agreement. But for the avoidance of doubt, it's tarmac policy across the UK to have community liaison groups wherever there's the slightest demand. And in fact, sometimes I think we impose it on people when they don't want one. I trust you can see from this that tarmac's fully committed to drive improvements. And I hope that you can approve this application as recommended by your officers, not just in compliance with policy, but with confidence in tarmac's authentic approach to working with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Could I possibly ask you both to give your full names again, because I think it was slightly missed at the beginning.
So, yeah, I'm Stephen Cowan, Head of Strategic Planning and Geology at Tarmac.
I'm Thomas Clifford, Chartered Engineer, Chartered Geologist. I'm a Director of Gears.
Thank you very much indeed. Did everybody get that? Good. Councillor Mack, Councillor Jones.
Okay, thank you. Can we just be very clear about this withdrawal of condition 6? The community's understanding, I think, was that you had proposed that that would be withdrawn and that you would remain the planning condition, that the arrangement that you'd come to was at 2.5 PPP, PP minus 1, PPV minus 1. And is that what you're proposing that we do today? Because I think what I understood you to say was that we should, your view was that we should grant as per the officers at 6 PPV minus 1, but that you would make a commitment to work with the community to build confidence that the vibration and air overpressure aren't felt at any greater level than they are at the moment.
Yes. So I did withdraw that proposal. I do understand where your officers are coming from a point of planning law and best practice. I'm happy to, as I said to the committee, I would be happy to stick with the 2.5. I think it could limit our chances to progress, but there's still scope there, and by using the agreement, the memorandum of understanding that we have, I think we can progress within that. But if it's a matter of changing the condition back, back to 2.5, I can accept that as well. I think for the wider scope, the solution that we now have is the best of both worlds.
Did you have a follow-up to that?
I do have a follow-up, which is that if you change the condition, because I know one of the issues that the community, one of the things the community said was that, and we asked they're blasting once a month, you've confirmed you're blasting once a month. If you go up to a higher, if you're permitted more, so 4 times that, will you blast 4 times less often with a big blast, or is that not how it works?
No, we'll blast the same, more or less the same number of blasts. That's about the quarry design and how each face advances.
Okay, Councillor Parker. Oh, sorry, was it Councillor Jones? Oh, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Parker. Mr. Cowan, my question to you. I'm really glad to hear you've got a robust complaints procedure in place. So, with regards to those complaints that have been made by residents of the damage done to their property, how many have been upheld and how many have been declined? in the last 10 years? And if I just might add also, if the ones that were declined, if there were some that were declined, is there an ombudsman to whom the complaints can be referred?
Okay, so I referred to having a complaints procedure going forward. We don't have anything like that at the moment. At the moment, what we have is a hard, straight limit. There is the blasting limit, the PPV. Have you met it or have you not? And then that's enforced by the council. What we have done is to spend time and money getting behind that to understand that there's more to it. And in doing so, we have tried to see, is there any truth in the idea that blasting has caused any damage, and to help talk through with people what else might be going on. So Tom and his colleague at his firm, who are chartered engineers, have been in to see houses and to talk to people about that. But that's not been a complaints procedure. Tom might be able to pick up on that.
Very brief follow-up, if I may. Thank you for that. That's really important for the clarification. But I'm concerned, so you do have all of these complaints documented, and are they open to, I mean, is it a transparent process in terms of people wanting to see what's actually happened?
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
If that's okay, I'll pick that up. So over the last 2 years, there's been open engagement with the local community. Stephen's asked if Gears would act independently. I know that sounds difficult when being paid by Tarmac, but the scope is for us to act independently. So every member of the community that's engaged with the process, we've offered to inspect their houses. In terms of damage to houses, that is governed by the Quarries Regulations, the Health and Safety Act. So it's protected as outside of planning jurisdiction in that terms. In terms of damage, your officer quoted what PAM 50 says in terms of the vibration limits. That's actually for coal mining. So coal mining, large-scale mining operations, a blast event can be up to, say, 10 seconds. The damage limit for that is 15, and the officer's correct. Ravelrig is a quarry. They're very short durations. So actually the damage limit from quarry blast is around 135. The residents that are complaining are experiencing a vibration of 0.2 to 0.3. Now, as the officer said earlier, the human detection point is 1.5. So when the air blast comes in, that will cause the building to vibrate. So people quite often mistake that for vibration. So Stephen addressed, and the councillor mentioned, there are concerns around damage to property. That's a very real concern. And in doing so, we've gone and inspected the properties. Unfortunately, most buildings have got cracks. And so what we're able to do then is look at the cause of those defects, those cracks in the property, and we're able to conclude that they are not seismically induced. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
And I would like that process to continue in terms of that open
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind both switching your microphones off, just thank you very much. Councillor Pogson?
So I think what it feels as though it comes down to for me is the trust, confidence that we can have in you if we were to pass the condition as recommended, that you would maintain that relationship with the community council and work in good faith with that. And I suppose that's where my problem sits, because how can we have that trust and confidence for you next year, 5 years, none of us will be here forever, how will we know that that relationship won't change, circumstances won't change, and you will renege on the commitments you're making today, which I really appreciate, by the way.
I've offered to take that off from Stephen. Because we've been brought in independently, our report, we've actually recommended the blast method statement. So the officer talked about Bonington Mains and the reporter requiring a blast method statement. We submitted way before that, was John, so it was actually a Gears recommendation to do it. Now the blast method statement in there, we can actually talk about the complaints procedure. We can also put requirements on Tarmac in terms of how they're going to engage. We'd also included quarry liaison groups. So actually, we're talking about PPV limits. Now, the officers said that needs to be enforceable, so you need to follow PAM 50. It says not below 6, by the way, on PAM 50. So your hands are tied in terms of what's enforceable. The blast method statement That is open. So you condition the blast method statement. The applicant then writes the statement, and in there we can say tarmac have to work to 2.5 at that point, and all the controls you're talking about, we can put that in the blast method statement. That goes to the officer. We've had the open conversation. Tarmac have very been open in terms of what we expect on that. That is the right control measure for it. Does that help answer?
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Parker. After Councillor Parker, is there any further questions? No.
Yeah, thank you. It follows on from that. So I think one of the comments that was made in your presentation was that this was the lowest PPV limit in Scotland. I wondered what the second lowest was. Is it 2.55 and then 6 immediately? You've sort of answered it in terms of PAM 50. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, as I said, I've been working in Scotland for 28 years. There's a bunch at 12, there's some at 10, and there's a big bunch at 6. I haven't seen any less than 6.
Okay. No further questions from committee? Thank you both very much indeed for your time today. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, this is now a chance. Yes. This is now a chance, obviously, to ask officers for clarification. So, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you. Continuing that train of thought, reference is made to PAM 50, and I think the applicant has just said that that PAM 50 guidance specifies 6 millimetres as being a minimum. Can you just confirm that that is the case, and I suppose what options would be available to committee if we wanted to reverse the condition back to the 2.5? Thanks.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, to clarify the position, the condition that we're recommending, and ultimately we have to make a recommendation to committee on the conditions, and I would advise you that, you know, the circular on planning conditions does specifically state you shouldn't necessarily be accepting conditions because applicants put them forward, but the condition that we've attached is the one that complies with the most up-to-date position in PAN 50 in terms of the PPV limits, and it also mirrors the condition that was attached on appeal for Bonington Mains Quarry, and that is the condition that's recommended in the PAN. So we've tried to make it PAN compliant. That said, it's within your gift as a committee to decide whether you want to apply a lower level. Our best advice is not to. But if you want to apply a lower level of 2.5 and keep it similar to what is there, then you know, I can give you a suggested wording for that. I think the other point that's come out of this has been the point that's made about the good neighbourhood agreement suggestion that's been put forward, and I would direct members to Circular, I think, 3 of 2012 on planning obligations, where a good neighbourhood agreement is entered into between a person, for example, a landowner, a developer, and a community body, as opposed to the planning authority. And the specific advice at paragraph 60 in the circular is that a good neighbourhood agreement should not be viewed as an alternative to a planning obligation. A planning authority should not seek to make it a requirement for the grant of planning permission that a good neighbourhood agreement be put in place. So hopefully that clarifies, I think, some of the points have been made by a number of the parties about the ongoing dialogue between the operators and the community.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Key. Your hand went up first, and then Councillor Mount, and then Councillor Podson.
Just carrying on the same thing, I take then the PAN 50 guidance came into force after the original planning application then. That's why there's a difference.
Yeah, that's correct. The various parts of the PAN have been updated over the years, and I think most recent iterations from 1996. And we've kind of been working through that, but I think we obviously did have the 2008 permission that still had that condition put on us, and I think it's been narrated by the applicants. There are other cases throughout Scotland where there's been different levels set, but our view as officers to you has been to go with the advice in the PAN at the moment, because that takes account of the potential impacts, and you'll see that there's a 95% confidence interval for scenario 1 there as well, so it's not for all of them. But I'd also confirm that I think the applicant was correct in saying that when we had previously investigated non-compliance with the 2.5 and had sought an independent report from Vibrock, that came back and said that we were in compliance with it.
Councillor Matt?
Okay, thank you, Convener. I wanted to ask about the interaction between the potential condition 6 and the blast method statement. We've heard that Tarmac have submitted a blast method statement. We've been told that's best practice for the control of overburden, but in this case it would also presumably have an impact on, even though we can condition the level of vibration. Can that blast method statement contain a commitment not to blast above 2.5 millimetres per second? Apologies for getting the wrong measurement earlier. Because the wording in this does, in PAN 50, does say shall not exceed a peak particle velocity. So my understanding of that I would read shall not exceed means that they could put in place a blast method statement which is lower than that. And what is the enforceability of that if they chose to do that? How does that blast method statement and PAN 50 interact?
Convener, I'm not actually certain the blast method statement would necessarily specify that. We would still hang our hat on the condition that's specifically dealing with peak particle velocity. And I think that was part of the debate we had when we did look at Bonington, because while we were looking at a slightly different issue, which was air overpressure, our view was that that condition at least met the precision test from a planning enforcement point of view, whereas for the blast method statement, there was almost a scenario where you were looking at each blast, whereas in fact the condition that the reporter has put on just requires one statement to be put in, in order to purify it. But I think again it would still be that we would be looking at the question about enforcement on the PPV condition itself, really, whether that had been breached. And again, I think the difficulty that could arise, say for example, if you did have a 2.5 PPV condition, is that if it came to enforcement action, and I think that's part of the similar debate with what's happened with Bonington, is there a danger that the council could be found to be using enforcement powers unreasonably, given the very specific advice in the PAN and the fact that we have a PPV model condition that's directly out of the PAN as such? I hope that clarifies it, but it's still within your gift. You could still set it, the PV, at 2.5.
Can I come back? I just want to question one thing you said, Mr. Devaney, at the beginning, when you said the blast method statement deals with an individual blast. I mean, my understanding of what was being described was that a blast method statement would be, this is how we carry out blasts, and that we won't set charges that will lead to a greater sort of particle velocity of more than 2.5 millimetres per second, which to me would seem a reasonable way of doing that, rather than having an individual blast method for each individual blast. It would be more that this is how we carry them out under these conditions.
I think just to clarify, my colleagues have shown me that your blast method statement could include a commitment to limited PPV levels, but I suppose the only question would be, would there then be a conflict with the PPV condition as to which one we're enforcing at the end of the day?
Councillor Potterson.
Very similar to that former question. I mean, what I heard was that the operators would work very closely with the community representatives and would only adjust the strength of their blast operations in agreement with the community council. And they said that that would be confirmed in this blast statement and they'd be held to account on that. I just, from your point of view, is that a viable way forward?
If you were to limit it at a certain level, so you're either limiting it the 2.5 or the 6. If you limit it at the 2.5, that's it. We need to come back with a further application to amend the condition again. If you limit it at 6, which is what we have proposed, and through the Good Neighbour Agreement, as the applicant set out, is building that confidence at the community that they can go up to 6. without causing the impacts and working within the blast method statement. But if you were to limit it at the 2.5, then we need a further application for a section 42 to amend that condition to come back. So it's not just a case of, if the community then did get comfortable with it, we would still need to go through a planning process.
Okay, is there any further questions from committee? No, maybe on to discussion. I think there's a number of aspects in this that I'm getting the general feeling from committee that we're comfortable with those variations. But the one that obviously is causing the most amount of concern is the previous 10, which is now 6. I completely understand the community's point of view, and I do understand why officers have chosen to change this. We've had a recent appeal decision, and we understand the direction of travel on this. It is not ideal, obviously, to be dependent upon the applicant to do consideration, but I feel that in good faith they have worked incredibly well with the community. And I think it would be unreasonable in this circumstance, considering the information that they have provided so far and their relationship so far, but also considering, obviously, what we've been told already from our appeal decision and Pound 50, to go against the recommendation of the officers. So I'm glad we had a long debate over this. I would prefer the fact that we stick to the conditions. I appreciate there's different issues within the blasting statements and so on, but I still feel that we would be under the possibility of, obviously, the applicant appealing either on this for understandable reasons. So I would recommend from the committee point of view that on reflection that we take consideration of the officers' recommendations and we agree to vary the conditions put in front of us. So I would open this up to the rest of the committee, Councillor Mowat, followed by Councillor Mumford.
Thanks, Convener. I think I understand a little bit about explosions because my father used to do them when I was a small child in a professional capacity. But what I don't understand, and I'm not technical, but I do understand enough about this to know that what people are experiencing below now is probably not vibration, but it's overburden. But I don't understand how that limit on the vibration impacts. I don't understand that algorithm. And I think that's something that I think is brilliant that Tarmac are working with the community to try and build that understanding. But I think at the moment, we've got something that everyone is really comfortable with, that a lot of people aren't even noticing that there's a quarry away down the road. Those people that do notice it and are engaged are quite confident in the way that this is operating, that it can operate. If we go up to 6 and things sort of start happening, I think we disturb what is actually a really positive and comfortable relationship between community and operator. So I would be minded to say 2.5 millimetres per second and restrict it because we're brought an agreement between the community and the operator. And I think there is a risk of appeal, and that will flush out a whole load of rabbits. But actually, I think it might be worth flushing that out. I think there is a reasonableness here and that everyone can operate. And there was no indication that in order to continue to operate, for the quarry to do what it needs to do, that they need to increase the size of blast, but they could increase the size of blast, and that they're blasting at a reasonable rate. So I would be minded to move that we amend the new condition 6 to restrict to 2.5 millimetres per second. And then if they can continue that work and build that faith and build that understanding about that relationship between vibration and overburden, they can come back with another amended planning application if that is necessary for their operations. But we heard nothing today that this was necessary for their operations. But I think to maintain good community relations, it might be the wisest thing for us to do. So I will move that we accept everything except condition 6 and we amend that to, sorry, I have to keep putting my glasses on, that ground vibration as a result of blasting operations will not exceed a peak particle velocity of 2.5 millimetres per second. Bang, end it there. Unless, and that's when we get to that point, I will be moving.
Okay, is there any further comment from committee? Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel a little bit torn on this one because I think your points are very good, Councillor Mowat. But I also think that we don't make our decisions based either on developer or community. We take both into account, and we should be led by best practice and planning officers. And I suppose I feel like this is the safety net. This isn't the thing that will govern it. I think we've heard really good things about blast statements and about community engagement, and that should be the day-to-day reference document that happens. And I suppose I'm taking it on faith that from Tarmac that that will continue to happen regardless of what changes here. As we've heard, they don't need it at this stage, and that there is really good relationships. I personally don't see that this, as a decision of the planning authority, needs to impact on those good relations. And I think, hopefully, by Tarmac's representations today, they've done a lot to improve that, as we've already seen. So I suppose I feel more comfortable for consistency with going with officer recommendations on this. I think it makes sense to me, and I don't think it would have a significant impact, even if this was sort of stuck to as the norm. But actually, I think this is the document that sits on the shelf, and I hope the documents that we've heard about, the memorandum of understanding, will be actually the day-to-day governance of these things. But this provides that consistency for us as a planning authority. So I think I'm minded to go with officer recommendations, but I do very much appreciate the points that were made there.
Any further comment from committee? No? Okay, so moving formal, I will be suggesting the fact that we agree the variations as proposed by the officers, and I would just like to reiterate that just because they can increase it doesn't mean they're going to. So I would expect, obviously, Tarmac to continue working with the community and obviously reinforcing that as their good neighbourhood agreement, etc., going forward, etc. So I will be proposing the fact that we agree the variation as proposed by the officers today. So yes, if you could read the condition. I was going to look for a seconder first. Okay, so looking for a seconder. Councillor Key.
Yeah, formally.
Would you like to read the conditions?
Thank you, Convener. And maybe Councillor Mowat could see whether she agrees with the wording. But the suggested condition would be unless otherwise agreed in writing with the planning authority. That's the wriggle room element. Ground vibrations resulting from blasting shall not exceed a maximum peak particle velocity of 2.5 millimetres per second in any plane as measured at vibration-sensitive buildings. The measurement is to be taken from a maximum of 3 mutually perpendicular directions taken at ground surface at any vibration-sensitive building. That would be acceptable. Or whether you would just wish it as the ground vibrations. And details of all results on the site blasting operation shall be recorded by the developer, and all record sheets shall be sent to the planning authority on a quarterly basis and made available to the planning authority upon reasonable request.
Would you like the receipt of those documentation? Right. Well, thank you. That's very technical. I'm very impressed that we've managed to telepathically come up with that across the room. Thank you very much, Mr. Devaney. I'd accept that as the move that as the amendment. Yeah.
Very happy to second that formally.
Okay, so we have two positions. A motion moved by Councillor Osler, seconded by Councillor Key, which is to grant the Section 42 application to vary conditions as per the officer's recommendations. Against that, an amendment moved by Councillor Mowat, seconded by Councillor Jones, which is to grant amending condition 6 as outlined by Mr. Devaney. Could I take the votes for the amendment by Councillor Mowat, please? Thank you. And for the motion, please. Thank you. That's 8 for the motion and 3 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, committee. I appreciate we have been sitting for a very long period of time, and being mindful of the fact that breaks are important. Our next hearing was due to start at 2. I'm proposing the fact that our hearing starts at 2:10, and that should give people 35 minutes for lunch. I appreciate that's not a huge amount of time, but I hope you will understand why it's only that period.
Okay, I'll move us on to the final items. So we have 6.5 and 6.6. These are in relation to the planning permission at Ravelrig Quarry. And I will, 6.5 is the protocol note, 6.6 is the main report, and I'll hand over to planning officers to introduce.
I will just share my screen. Good afternoon, Councillors. My name is James Armstrong, and I am the Case Officer for Planning Application 24/06106/FUL at Ravelrig Quarry for the extension of the quarry. As with the previous hearing, before I begin, I need to make a verbal update to committee regarding recommendations 3, 4 and 5. There's similar errors to what was there before as the result of, as part of drafting when writing the report. Condition 3 needs to be updated to remove reference to restrictions on drilling. Those operations sufficiently controlled by Part A of Condition 2. Condition 4 needs to be updated in 2 ways. First, to refer to Condition 2 rather than Condition 3 in the first paragraph. And second, to alter Condition B of the condition to refer to times out with normal operations and to refer specifically to plant machinery, as this was the goal of this provision, as outlined in the text explaining the requirement for this in this part of Condition 4 in the report of handling, is to control noise with respect to quarry operations that may occur outside normal working hours of the quarry. Condition 5 needs to be amended to replace the word replace the word emission with replace the word submission with emission in the condition, which is simply a typo. My apologies for this. To begin with a little site history, Ravelrig Quarry operates subject to planning permission 08/00140/FUL, which was granted in 2010, permitting miller extraction at the site until 2042. Rock extraction, including associated processing, is currently undertaken at the site with an average extraction rate of approximately 600,000 tonnes per year over the previous 10 years. Planning permission 08/00140/FUL relates to an area of approximately 57 hectares with a permitted extraction area of approximately 28.4 hectares. This application before you today for the extension has been made for the extension of the quarry to the south and would enable extraction of approximately 9.5 million tonnes of saleable dolerite. Importantly, the application currently under consideration needs to be seen in the context of concurrent application 24/06100/FUL, which you considered earlier today, for alterations to the conditions governing operations at Ravelrig Quarry. As you've noted, many of the documents provided in support of the application under consideration make reference to what is proposed as part of the Section 42 application due to clear links between the two proposals. However, for the avoidance of doubt, the application for the extension now before you remains its own distinct application requiring a separate decision. Conditions 29 and 30 of the previous application were drafted to cover for the eventuality that permissions for the extension now under consideration is not granted for the eventuality that the planning permission for the extension is not implemented. So you're making a decision on purely the extension. As before, efforts have been made to ensure a high degree of consistency amongst the recommended conditions between the two applications. The report of handling considers all aspects of the proposal and has recommended a large number of conditions necessary to ensure the proposal's acceptability in terms of the development plan. In some cases, these are the same or similar to conditions applied to 08/00140/FUL, the previous condition that governs the quarry extraction. And in other cases, conditions have been replaced or are completely new, reflecting the changed policy context since the operation of the quarry was granted in 2010. Planning advice note PAN 50, Annex D, controlling the environmental effects of surface mineral workings, additionally forms a material consideration. This is the location plan provided by the applicant, with the red line representing the site under consideration and the blue line representing the land under the applicant's control. This is the map of the site as existing, which provides you the site's context. Ravelrig Quarry is located to the west of Edinburgh, approximately 450 metres to the west of Balerno and 2 kilometres from Kirk Newton, located essentially between the two towns. The quarry is surrounded on all sides by land of a rural character, featuring agricultural land as well as wooded and hilly terrain. The A70 is located to the site's south and southeast, and a railway line is to the site's north. The quarry's entrance is via a private access road to the site's west, access via Long Dalmahoy Road. A gas pipeline is located approximately 60 metres to the south of the site, shown as in orange on the map. The existing quarry has been worked down to around 145 metres above Ordnance Datum in the east and 130 metres above Ordnance Datum in the west. Rock extraction is undertaken by drilling and blasting. Electric fixed processing plant is located on the site, whilst an area to the north of the site includes a weighbridge, offices, a workshop, settling ponds, with associated activities on the site. This is the site as proposed. Note the proposed area of extraction to the south, highlighted in purple. The area where soil is to be stripped is highlighted in orange. You see the sort of orange cross-hatching. And the temporary soil storage bunds are to be located to the south of the site, to the south of that field, to the bottom there. Additionally, note the area of trees to be removed, that can be removed as part of the extension. So anywhere covered under the orange hatching or the purple area are going to be removed. The diverted gas main needs to be highlighted to you. That's moved to the south to run along parallel to the A70. And the air pressure attenuation bund to be formed to the east of the extraction area. Following restoration, this is what the site is to look like. Note the restoration of Dalmahoy Hill, the creation of a new lake, and the various areas of planting and habitat restoration. I'll go through this in more detail for you later. This map shows the additional woodland planting proposed in areas B, C, and D, though, as you'll note from the report of handling, this is considered insufficient. A matter will be explained later as addressed by condition. Here are two views of the quarry basin. So this is the quarry basin looking from the east to the west, up on a viewpoint. Note in particular Dalmahoy Hill in the background to help you orientate yourself, and Kames Hill further in the background there, and also the southern face of the quarry basin. This is the part that's going to be removed as part of the extension. Now you have the view to the north with the northern face of the quarry basin, and then views out towards the Firth of Forth and the surrounding countryside. Further, you've got another view of the southern quarry face here. Note the bund on top of the quarry face there as proposed, as existing. That will also be removed. More images of the southern quarry face view there. This is the tree line to the south of the current quarry basin, so you can actually see that just in the distance behind the quarry face there, and this is it more zoomed up. This is also to be removed. This is a sort of a view looking along the south of the quarry basin, facing towards the historic parish boundary. That's the area of trees running north-south along the west of the application site. This is all part of this is also to be removed. This is the field to the south of the quarry basin. Apologies, you can't see much field because of naturally how of the quarry has been designed to restrict views to the quarry basin itself. So of course you've got screening in the way, but to the rear of this, and then you can actually see the tree line behind, so that the area of sort of trees in full leaf there is the sort of screening area that's to be replaced as part of the proposed works. This is the view showing the northern and western quarry faces, taken from the south. For your information, you can see Dalmahoy Hill there in the background. This is the area that's to be sort of repaired as part of restoration works. And then you can see the northern and eastern quarry faces facing directly towards where I was standing when I was taking the photos from earlier to the south, south and west. There are a number of residential properties nearby, including 582 Lanark Road, described as Hannahfield on the map, 48 Cassidy Wynd, located approximately at the red dot on the map, Stable House, described as Garden Cottage on the map. The site is partially located within the designated Greenbelt area and partially within the designated Countryside Policy area. In addition, part of the site is located within the designated Dalmahoy Hill Local Biodiversity Site and Ravelrig Quarry Local Geodiversity Site, while the Water of Leith West and Pentland Special Landscape areas are located to the south of the site, across the A70. The site lies in close proximity to two scheduled ancient monuments, Dalmahoy Hill and Kames Hill. The Blerno Conservation Area is located to the site's east. Rights of Way 106 and 107 are in proximity to the site, described by the yellow dotted line on the map. As before, for the sake of keeping my presentation to a reasonable length, I do not propose to go through all of the changes proposed to conditions. I would ask councillors to refer to the report of handling for these. Instead, I'll focus on the key issues. First, in terms of principle, the proposal is supported by the local development plan. As Ravelrig Quarry is designated for mineral extraction by LDP policy INF 20. MPF 4 policy 33D applies to the proposal containing a number of criteria that must be met in order for the sustainable extraction of minerals to be supported. No conflicts with the criteria are found, subject to conditions being applied. INF 20 states that quarrying of Ravelrig will be supported, referring to quarries rather than a specific zone or area. In respect to the Greenbelt and Countryside Policy Area, Ravelrig Quarry is located where there is a long-established mineral resource in the Greenbelt and Countryside. The countryside location of the quarry is therefore essential, as the resource cannot be moved. Landscape impacts of the proposal are considered in the landscaping section of the report. However, in summary, the proposal is not found to detract from the rural environment or landscape of the policy of the surrounding area, subject to conditions. I'm not going to read out the text on the slide as it's very long, but that is the relevant policy text. So ENV 18 and then MPF 4 policy 8, part A. Just for the clarity as well, I've given you an idea of the designations here of this countryside policy area. So this is a map of the quarry within the centre. I haven't got a red line, unfortunately, on it, but you'll recognise the landforms quite easily, hopefully. And then you see where the countryside policy area is designated. That's to the left of the proposal there in sort of yellow hatching. And then you have the green belt policy area is highlighted in green. I'm going to go back and forth through that so you can see. You'll note actually that there's part of the site is split between the countryside policy area and the greenbelt policy area itself. However, all of it is covered by one or the other. The policy meets criteria A of LDP policy ENV 18, which states for the purposes of agriculture, woodland and forestry, horticulture or countryside recreation, or where the countryside location is essential, and provided any building structures or hard-standing areas of scale, quality, design, with use. And the extension also meets criteria C of LDP policy ENV 18, which states for development relating to the use of existing use or buildings, such as an extension to a site or building, ancillary development or intensification of the use. In terms of climate change, MPF 4 Policy 1 requires that when considering all development proposals, significant weight will be given to the global climate and nature crises. Policy 2A of MPF 4 requires that development proposals be cited and designed to minimise life cycle greenhouse gas emissions as far as possible. The production and processing of aggregate and similar products by its nature is an energy-intensive activity. However, one that is noted in MPF 4 as making an essential contribution to the Scottish economy. The transport of these products is similarly energy intensive and requires significant energy. Ravelrig Quarry features existing fixed plant powered by mains electricity and is located within a relatively close proximity to where many of the products produced by the quarry are likely to be consumed, resulting in aggregates produced at Ravelrig Quarry having a comparatively low carbon footprint when compared with the aggregate produced in your average quarry that might otherwise be produced in. Further details are given in the report of handling based upon the supporting documentation provided. I had produced a number of slides that were going to go through the amenity considerations, but given the just extensive discussion that was had this morning on the Section 42 application, I think I'm just going to move past that and go to the restoration. I can always come back to that later if you have specific questions. Regarding restoration, on the slides now is the proposed concept restoration plan. The proposals require the applicant via condition 12 to first submit a restoration and aftercare scheme to the planning authority for approval, and then to implement the approved scheme within 24 months of the cessation of operations. The scheme to be provided is to be in broad accordance with the concept restoration scheme on the slide, and the applicant is then to undertake aftercare of the site. The scheme attempts to integrate the quarry into the wider landscape whilst enhancing biodiversity and providing public access to the site. The landform of the east of the the landform of the eastern side of Dalmahoy Hill is to be recreated. Grassland habitats are to be created. Native woodland is to be planted, and paths to be created linking with the local footpath network. The quarry basin is to be allowed to flood, forming a new lake, featuring a diverse range of habitats. Works to be undertaken progressively to achieve this as rock extraction of the quarry progresses. I won't go into details of this right now, as the progression of the landforms in and surrounding the quarry are well described in the submitted drawings. However, I'll quickly pass over the submitted restoration phasing plans over the next few slides. So this is the restoration of the quarry as this is the quarry as existing. You can see there, you've seen this slide already. This is as proposed. Come back to in a second. We've seen this already again. This is phase 1, which is anticipated to last approximately 6 to 9.5 years. Of course, at no point will the quarry actually specifically look individually like this, as things are going to be progressed as time progresses. Of course, they're not going to be just, go to phase 1, stop, phase 2, stop, phase 3, stop. They're going to be progressively put together in that sense. This is phase 2, anticipated to last approximately 5.5 to 8.5 years. And this is phase 3, anticipated to last approximately 4 to 6 years. This is the final restoration plan, which I've gone over previously. Conditions 12 and 13 include provisions for restoration and aftercare of the site, requiring the creation and enhancement of habitats, landscape planting, seeding, the interpretation and marking out of the continuing line of the historic parish boundary, and contains provision that the landscaping scheme is to be undertaken progressively as extraction of the quarry progresses, as mentioned. Additional matters, including landscaping, tree planting, biodiversity, and protected species have been covered by conditions 12, 13, 14, 16, and 17. Condition 14 contains provision with respect to additional landscape screening and the alteration of the shape and form of bunding to ensure that they more effectively blend into the existing landscape character. Conditions 16 and 17 contain provision with respect to additional tree planting to offset tree loss and the provision of appropriate supporting documentation. Conditions 27 and 28 contain provision with respect to protected species and biodiversity requiring an ecological mitigation enhancement strategy and a habitat management and maintenance plan to be submitted. These conditions are necessary as other council officers who are, say, the tree officer, the landscape officer, the relevant person, expert in the council has concerns about whether or not the respective proposed mitigation measures are sufficient to meet the policy requirements with respect to the quality and quality of replacement tree planting, impacts the landscape form, character and soils. A number of conditions have been therefore recommended to be attached to the Planning Commission, granted, requiring prior to the commencement of development that the necessary updated documents, plans, statements, schemes and reports are to be submitted to the Planning Authority to approval to address those concerns specifically. This approach is detailed in the report of handling. In order to ensure the risks to restoration works are mitigated and compliance with LDP Policy 33F Part 7, Condition 31 is recommended to be applied, requiring a financial guarantee covering all site restoration and aftercare liability to be granted in favour of the Planning Authority. In terms of protected species, the main species is likely to be impacted by these proposals are bats, badger, breeding owls, barn owl, peregrine falcon, and peregrine falcon. Mitigation must be secured by condition. Given the number of mitigation measures required to manage impacts on protected and priority species, a condition requiring the submission and implementation of an ecological mitigation and management plan is recommended. This is further expand on the measures outlined in the ecological impact assessment. Further details are given in the report of handling. In terms of biodiversity net gain, the biodiversity net gain assessment provided by the applicant demonstrates the principle of biodiversity enhancement at the application site, with additional peat enhancement proposed, which will further enhance the wider site biodiversity. Careful management of the site will be required, however, to achieve the target condition to justify the scores presented within the biodiversity net gain assessment. This is particularly the case for the lowland dry acid grassland, which will revert to scrub without appropriate management. A habitat management and maintenance plan will be required to deliver this, which it is proposed to be secured by condition. Moving to discuss transport and rights of way issues, the current conditions regarding road safety and extraction rates are to be maintained. No unacceptable transport impacts are identified subject to these conditions being retained. The rate of quarry extraction consented is to be controlled, limiting the average rate of extraction, heavy goods vehicle movements, as well as access points to the quarry and their maintenance. The Council has a statutory duty under Section 46 of the Countryside Scotland Act 1967, and a similar duty under Section 13 of the Land Reform Scotland Act to sort of maintain these rights of way as open and free from obstruction and encroachment, and also that, LDV policy ENV 28 states planning permission will only be granted for development on sites where at the greenbelt boundary, where it, point B, promotes access to the surrounding countryside, if appropriate, and point C includes landscape and environmental improvements that strengthen the greenbelt boundary and contribute to the multifunctional green and blue networks by improving active travel links, enhancing biodiversity and surface water management. In this circumstance, we've been able to secure agreement with the applicant with the assistance of Scotways for the applicant to provide a package of improvements of right-of-way, to right-of-way LC 107. This is recommended to be secured by condition. You can see on the map on the screen now the proposed public access routes and route of the existing rights-of-way. As you can see, substantial additional public access to the site as part of the final restoration scheme is to be secured. An informative has been added regarding the application's obligants in respect of the rights-of-way. In conclusion, the proposal is considered to be acceptable in terms of the development plan, subject to conditions. Mineral extraction has long been established at the site and is supported at Ravelrig Quarry by the development plan. The location is essential and no significant adverse impact to the area's rural character or landscape quality is identified, subject to mitigation secured by conditions. Soils and other materials are to be stored for reuse as part of restoration works. Although amenity impacts to neighbouring residents are foreseen, the degree of impact is sufficiently mitigated such that it is not unreasonable and secured by condition. Further conditions have been attached as appropriate to ensure the proposal will not result in a significant or unreasonable adverse impact to heritage assets, archaeology, landscape, trees, or transport. The application, subject to conditions, is therefore considered to comply with the development plan. No other material considerations outweigh this conclusion. It's therefore recommended that this application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Arthur, for your presentation. So I'm going to open up for committee to ask questions. I see Councillor Mumford.
Thanks very much, and thanks a lot for the presentation. I think you said you didn't have this, but so sorry for asking an annoying question for the first one. But I'm looking at the city plan proposals map and trying to match things up to just see where the countryside and greenbelt areas fall in the application, and I can't quite make it match up. I don't know if you're able to, even just with a cursor, sort of show us on the map.
I will try and indicate as best I can. Unfortunately, the map is rather zoomed out and the lines are not the best. Elaine's got it? Okay. I also have the location plan, which will also be of use to you to consider. Oh, Elaine's got it there. Yeah, so we've got I believe that's the countryside policy area in yellow. We've got the green belt area in the sort of green dotted area. As you can see, the lines slightly overlap. And then you've got the extraction site to the south here. I'll let you look at that. As you can see, the sort of field boundaries don't necessarily line up with those lines on the map itself. However, you should be able to get a good idea there. Elaine, if I can just share my screen, I can show you the location plan, which will help you with the red line boundary. So as you can see, the field to the south is largely within the red line area is largely within the greenbelt area. However, part of it, a small section to the north and to the northeast, are within the countryside policy area.
Thank you, that's helpful. And is any of it area that is assigned for mineral, does it all fall fully within countryside and or green belt? Thanks.
That's a complicated topic, because if you look at the wording of policy, of the policy and city plan, which I'll just share for you now. Don't show the wording? Okay.
If you look at the proposals map here, where the dotted section is, that's green belt, and that's where your extension's going. What you can't see is the sort of a shading just underneath here, in this area here. That's little blue circles, and that shows the extent of the existing quarry, which is then covered by INF. What number are you on? 20? Which shows the existing mineral extraction sites.
Okay, I have Councillor Manish Manikan.
Yeah, thank you. So my question was, the species that would be impacted, I think you mentioned bats, badgers, peregrine falcons, but I didn't hear anything. I heard something about restoration of trees, but that doesn't sound like restoration of an ecosystem. So can you advise on what happens to all of those species that you just mentioned?
I may ask to defer to my environmental colleagues in the corner there. Thank you.
I don't know if I could maybe come in first, convener, but obviously as part of the environmental statement, there's a chapter, I think it's chapter 8, which deals with ecology and sets out the position in terms of the various designations. And I think in that, in relation to bats, it's noted that there's local importance to roosting and foraging bats, highlighting the need that they'll need to potentially get a derogation licence from Nature Scot as a relevant agency. And I think 15 bat boxes are being proposed as part of that strategy as such. There's also badger birds and other measures and some bog restoration, but that's set out in an environmental statement.
Hi everyone, just to explain who I am, my name is Catherine Cumming, I'm the Senior Biodiversity Officer based within Planning Services. So just to kind of elaborate briefly on what Paul was saying, a full suite of ecological impact assessment has been undertaken, a full sort of set of mitigation measures have been identified, and we've streamlined that into one condition, which is ecological, I'm going to get this wrong, ecological mitigation strategy. So that outlines everything that they're required to do to deal with the impacts on protected species, and we're quite satisfied with the measures proposed.
I had a question.
Can I have a brief follow-up on that?
Yes, brief follow-up.
So pardon my ignorance, but I understand how you can repopulate with plant species because you've got a saved seed bank over here, but how do you repopulate with badgers, say? I'm not quite sure how the mitigation works, if you could say something.
So as a result of the works, we wouldn't be anticipating that any of the animals or species would lose their lives, so they'd still be present within the wider countryside area. The idea with the mitigation measures is that you're preventing them from accessing the site, you're preventing any impact on those species during the operation of the quarry, so they'll still be present in the wider area. In terms of sort of provision of bat boxes, that's recognising that roosting sites will be lost as a result of the extension of the quarry, and therefore they're providing alternative accommodation for those species, and the same would be the case for breeding birds and peregrine falcon as well.
Thank you. I did have a question that I'd like to ask that's to do obviously with the restoration. We note, unlike our previous application, which is about restoring it back to the land it was, that this is obviously going to become something that it wasn't previously, which is a large lake. And obviously part of this is greenbelt and part of this is countryside. So it's to have an understanding about how a large lake fits into that sort of idea and environment, because understandably that would have been the consideration towards the initial query about the restoration of that. Is the rest of it just being included because it's an extension to the existing, or would it be looked at separately? Just
Yeah, so the restoration plans would need to apply to the whole area that's under the applicant's control necessarily. So we'd be making sure that that comes forwards as part of the plans that would be submitted. We'd be looking for it to be in broad accordance with the plan that I presented to you of concept restoration.
Sorry, my question probably wasn't clear enough. I mean, I'm assuming the fact that under the initial site, it was a smaller lake, and now the lake is just getting bigger, because obviously it's a larger application. Was any thought consideration given to actually restoring it back to countryside?
Yes, it was. I mean, yes, it is getting to be larger, because of course the extraction area is larger. Our landscape architect looked at this, and while she identified a short-term negative impact, she identified a long-term positive impact on the landscape character and landscape form of the area. So the idea between the additional measures for landscaping conditions that are being requested is that we sort of mitigate further the shorter-term impacts to the landscape, if that makes sense.
I think it's how you look at it in terms of that restoration piece. Are you going back to land, or are you going back to, I wouldn't use lake, I would maybe use loch, for the water going in into that area. But it's a countryside feature. It's a greenbelt feature. It's not a development feature. So the use of a former quarry, a restoration project that introduces water and plant and species, does something different to a field or a landscaped area, but it's a perfectly acceptable restoration approach.
Okay, I have Councillor Parker followed by Councillor Key.
Yeah, thank you. To stay on the theme of biodiversity, I'm interested in the biodiversity net gain assessment, which I think is the thing that's informing the condition that's just been spoken about. The report says that careful management of the site will be required to achieve the target condition to justify the scores presented in that report. I just wondered what the planning mechanism is to govern that. Thanks.
So the applicant will be required to submit the relevant report that is recommended in condition 30. And then if they, of course, did not do that, they would be in breach of conditions.
I suppose, and what would be the, I suppose, assessment mechanism for understanding whether those conditions have been met?
Convener, I don't know if Catherine would like to come in, but obviously it was something that was addressed in the chapter, I think, chapter 4 in the EIA, in terms of, I think they'd used the English biodiversity metric in terms of calculating the gain, and I had understood that there wasn't a Scottish version of that at present, but I don't know, Catherine, if you've got any further input on that.
Yep, so in terms of biodiversity net gain, biodiversity enhancement, so that's ENV policy 37. There is no current Scottish metric. Nature Scott are currently working on that. In the absence of that, Scottish Government has published draft planning guidance for biodiversity, of which the biodiversity net gain metric from England is one of the recommended approaches. This guidance is still being developed in terms of use with quarries, and I know there's a lot of work going on in England to how we apply that. But the assessment has come in for the red line boundary, and the kind of core way that biodiversity net gain is implemented is through the use of this habitat monitoring, management and maintenance plan. Sorry. So the idea is that comes hand in hand with the BNG assessment. So you've got the kind of metric calculations, that's the kind of quantified enhancement, and then you've got this habitat management and maintenance plan that ensures that that is deliverable.
Councillor Key.
Yeah, thanks, James. It's to do with the trees issue, the fact there's insufficient replacement trees being planted. Can you just explain how that's going to be compensated for in some detail, please?
We dealt with by the relevant condition applied. Essentially, the applicant would need to submit revised plans demonstrating that they comply with the relevant policy in terms of quality and quantity of planting. It would be a matter for discussion with the applicant, likely myself and other officers, to make sure that that then resolve the concern of the arboricultural officer in that respect.
And that would be on the same site, not a site elsewhere?
Yes.
Okay, have we exhausted questions to officers? Oh, Councillor Mumford.
Sorry, I always got one. I just had a question about transport. We've seen that the Community Council submission talks about preventing traffic on Long Dalmhoy Road and a second road. I just want to check if that is covered by condition 20, just because I'm not familiar with the geography of it, which talks about the only means of vehicular access being from Kames Quarry Access Road. Or is that still an unmet sort of request from the...
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I think the condition 20 says, except for in emergencies, the only means of vehicular access to the site shall be from Kames Quarry Access Road onto Eastern Newton and to Haggs Farm Road. So there's no intention to go into the A70 as such.
Perfect, thanks for the confirmation.
Okay, any further questions to officers? No?
So I'm just going to look to the gallery and see if we have any representatives or consultees still there. No, okay. I'll just invite Councillor Gardner to come forward then, please. Thank you.
Meeting too often. Thank you for your time again. So, as you can see, the Balerno Community Council have left, and their key thing was the PPV, they thank Councillor Mount for actually raising that, and it was good that the committee debated that. You came to a different conclusion to the Community Council on that one. My ask here now is to consider planning condition 9, which is about, just give me a second to get, here we are. So it's about the blast method statement, which is cited there, and it's good that it is cited in the conditions, so that's wonderful. What the blast method statement entails is set out in the EIA, so there's quite clear things that it must meet. And what the ask of the Community Council and the community that I represent is that an informative be added, and it'll be something along the lines of it, and obviously officers will help in the wording of that, but if requested by the liaison group, which is going to emerge, you heard about it earlier this afternoon, a council officer would attend. So if the liaison group needs a council officer there, then they would be able to attend if requested. And given that it is a planning condition, the blast method statement, that would be appropriate, but this would be an informative, because the planning authority can't enforce something against itself. That would make no sense. So it's only an informative we're asking for, because I think we've all been through a lot today, and the level of knowledge about quarrying, although it's a big thing in it, with 3 quarries in or around my ward, we're unusual as a city authority when we're normally dealing with housing. So there's a sort of a level of expertise which is kind of required, and I think it would be even helpful. It certainly would be helpful to our community, but I think it would all be helpful to the planning department as well to know more about quarrying. So that's a simple ask, and I think you're going to hear from Thomas Clifford of Gears, who told me about the EIA and the relationship in the blast method statement. And you're going to also hear from Mr. Cowan. It's not an unusual thing for planning officers to be at these liaison groups. So it's a perfectly normal thing to ask for. And I hope that you'll take on board these views. I think it's a simple ask, and it will help for making things as good as they can be in the circumstances. So happy to take any questions, should there be any, but hopefully that's fairly straightforward, Convener and committee.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Is there any questions for Councillor Gardner? No? You may be excused.
Okay, could I invite the applicants to come forward, please?
Thank you, Chair and members again. I'll be briefer this afternoon. And I've actually got a short video to show you, which will save me speaking too much and you listening to me too much. Probably best to quickly back up Councillor Gardner's request on having a representative from the council at the officers at liaison meetings. That's very common around the country, and so I fully support that. I was pleased to hear the debate this morning about looking after resources, because this is very much a resource question that we have here at Ravelrig. Will run out in 2 or 3 years. The site will then be restored, and there'll be little chance of going back once the site is restored. That's really almost unfeasible. So the time is now to say, is there any more that we can get out? Now, that's not to say that you should just permit anything at any quarry until you can go no further. You've got to be subject to all of the usual tests that you've been discussing, and there'll be some sites where it's merited to keep going and some where it's not. The extension that we've designed is designed so that blasting doesn't come any closer to Hannahfield or Balerno. We've got the plan showing that. You've seen it many times already, actually. So, yeah. So the rock extraction area is the lilac kind of colour there, and you can immediately see the relationship between Hannahfield and Balerno, and usefully there's a 500-metre boundary line drawn on there as well. You might be surprised that the extraction area is not as big as you think, and that's because this quarry is so deep that we can get 24 years worth out of just that small area. So you've heard several times that Ravelrig Quarry's got a fully electric plant, and that's a more exciting thing these days than maybe it was when the investment was made. But having a long-term site allows you to make long-term investments. You add on the short transport distance to Edinburgh, and I think, as your officer said, compare the distance from Ravelrig to either the city or to the western periphery, where there's a lot of development, compared to the UK average for the delivery of stone is 28 miles, and we do have one of the lowest carbon footprints in the UK. It's key for the Edinburgh City Plan and the City of Edinburgh climate strategy, and that's why I agreed. Well, I actually didn't agree. I volunteered to submit a fully quantified climate change assessment with our application. We think that's reasonable these days. Slightly more old-fashioned, though, the proximity also reduces haulage costs, and then that reduces the costs of repairing things like potholes up to infrastructure delivery. And an interesting fact is that something like 80% of aggregates go into projects that are ultimately public funded, all of the roads and infrastructure. Turning to biodiversity, because we still have to look after all of the species that are protected under law. We are taking away a small area of trees, but we're planning an extensive planting programme. I think we're planting something like 6.7 hectares versus 2.5 that's taken away. And of the 2.5, most of that was a belt that Tarmac planted a few years ago. There's something like only 0.2 of a hectare of older trees being lost with this application. Unfortunately, we can't avoid that. But to try and see what else we can do, we have been looking at reinvigorating the existing woodland, because that's been overgrazed. So you go in and you see these huge trees, but there's nothing new coming through at all. And when I walked with an arboriculturalist, which is always difficult to say, he showed me exactly why. Every time a new tree tries to come up, the cows are just eating it. So we've agreed with the grazing tenant there that we'll fence off sections 5 to 10 years at a time and allow that wood to reinvigorate. And we're also, and this is important, think quite quick, we're giving up 1 million tonnes of consented reserve here, which is overlain with peat. And I think nowadays we wouldn't get consent for that, because we all recognise the benefit of peat now. So we've put that forward as a concession to go into this area here. Now, as was mentioned, all of these things, it's easy for me to just say them, and in Scotland, there's still no legislation that says you need to put numbers to them. In England, there is. I work in England and Scotland, and so I've used the English metric system to try and test ourselves in hard numbers and show how that applies, and I hope that's appreciated. Turning to restoration, you've heard something about our plans, and you'll see a bit in our video. That includes quite a lot of footpaths and circular walks around the new thing, and I think it's going to be a real asset to the countryside here. A lot of these connections aren't going to come until the end of the quarry, but we have already been working with both Scotways and your council's access officers, and some things are coming right away, including a new cycle path from the back of Cassidy Wynd, coming around the edge of the quarry to get you down to the N75 cycle route and into Kirknewton. So that's good news. I think that's all I've got to say. So if Technics can help me, I'll show you a video which I commissioned for the planning consultation. And the reason I did that was a lot of people just aren't familiar or aren't working every day with technical drawings. And so what we've tried to do with this video is to at least get the parameters and the scale and the components across so that people can understand and make informed representations. And until recently, that was mostly a bit of an artist's impression. But now with drone technology and modelling, we're able to make this technically correct. So you'll see a bit of a video that introduces the quarry, and then you'll see a model with a vehicle to give you scale of what's happening. And I hope that after that you too have got a good grasp of what we're talking about here and will be comfortable making a decision. But of course, any of us can answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, just for those online, we're just trying to ascertain and get the video.
Ravelrig Quarry lies to the west of Balerno, only a few miles from the centre of Edinburgh. It supplies stone for essential building and maintenance in the city and the surrounding urban area. Stone from this quarry need only travel a very short distance, which means a significantly reduced carbon footprint. Rock is removed from the ground by blasting. The quarry uses a carefully designed pattern of boreholes and explosives. Calculations show the precise amount of energy needed to remove the desired section of rock while minimising ground vibration. This is done in a highly controlled way, leaving a neat pile of stone. Outside the quarry, every blast is carefully monitored to meet strict limits. The broken rock is then lifted using an excavator and transported a very short distance in dump trucks to a fixed processing plant. At Ravelrig Quarry, the processing plant is fully electrified, and a long conveyor belt is used to carry stone down the hill to the final plant. This reduces vehicle transport and fuel use. Because of previous long-term investment, the whole internal process here has a very low carbon footprint for a quarry. Lorries arriving at Ravelrig are weighed in at the weighbridge near the entrance. The existing planning permission restricts quarry operations to 7 AM to 7 PM Mondays to Fridays, and 7 AM to 12 noon on Saturdays. In practice, most loads leave the quarry by 4 PM during the week. Due to the high quality of stone found here at Ravelrig, quarrying has been carried out for a very long time. Mapping shows a number of small quarries began before 1853. The current quarry was started in 1986, but in the next few years, the rock available within the current planning permission boundary will come to an end. Tarmac are now looking to extend the quarry a short distance to the south. This would allow the supply of stone for up to 25 years. The extended rock extraction area is shown by the purple line. Because the rock is thick, the additional area needed does not extend far beyond the existing limit. A wider excavation is however required to remove material overlying the target rock and to leave long-term stable slopes. This would run up to the orange line shown, but activity here will only take place for a short period. The existing line of trees alongside the A70 road would be kept but would be bolstered with a wider belt planted inside. Trees take many years to grow, although you can see what has been achieved by trees planted by Tarmac in 2010. Inside the new tree belt, a temporary mound would be created to screen any view of early activity. After that, all machinery associated with rock extraction would be down in the quarry and out of sight. The deposits which have been excavated to uncover the dolerite rock, consisting sandstone and mudstone, but called overburden, will be transported to the other side of the quarry, where it will be placed and graded in its final position. This will be carried out in 2 stages, once at the start of the project and once after approximately 5 years. After approximately 5 years, when the final overburden has been removed, soil can be taken from the storage mounds and spread on the final slopes on both the north and south side of the quarry. Seeding with conservation grass species will turn the slopes green. The remaining land between the excavation and the A70 road will also then be freed up and will be planted with native species of broadleaf trees. Extraction of rock will continue inside the quarry as it does at present for the next 20 years. Because of the depth, all activity will be out of sight below the horizon, unless of course you walk up Dalmahoy Hill for a better view. The same plant and machinery at the front of Dalmahoy Hill would continue to be used for processing without any addition. There would be no increase in output from the site and no change in working hours. Vehicles would still access the quarry via the A71 and work within currently permitted hours. The proposed restoration scheme leaves some exposed rock face along with the creation of gentler slopes in the north. This will provide a variety of habitats for wildlife. Future water levels have been predicted and shallow areas have been designed in to create a more natural landscape with additional benefits for biodiversity. The mix of bare rock and scree slopes, extensive areas of tree planting, species-rich grassland and a water body with an extensive shallow area will enhance the biodiversity at the site. The Ravelrig Quarry Bowl is quite an impressive view. Tarmac aimed to make the most of this by enhancing public access with footpath links, circular routes and viewing points. Information boards could be added so that people can learn more about the geology, landscape and archaeology at the site. The places in which we live, learn, work and play, and all our transport needs rely on rock aggregates. We need to meet society's needs for these products and to manage our natural resources as sustainably as possible. The location of Ravelrig Quarry and its ability to produce stone with a low carbon footprint make it an important asset for the City of Edinburgh. Tarmac works to ensure that future supply can continue with careful environmental controls and ever-improving standards.
Thank you. Only one other thing to say. I apologise for the AI. That it's not a real person. The people that produced the video fed in, please say this with an Edinburgh accent, and that's what came up.
Thank you. So anyway, I'm now going to open up questions to committee. So any questions from committee? Councillor Parker, followed by Councillor Mumford.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I wondered whether, as part of the city plan process, you explored looking at the extension of the quarry site, through that means, as opposed to just the planning application now. Did you engage with officers at that point to change the designation of the land?
No, and I don't think I was aware of an opportunity to do that. I'd seen the policy come up for review, and I was happy with the policy as it stood. Now, I do know that in England, they have a fairly extensive programme of allocating extensions to quarries in advance, and that's not really common practice in Scotland.
Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could give some more details on, so what was mentioned in the video there is that actually a lot of the, the extraction site is quite small, but deep, but then we've got the green belt beyond it, which is needing to be, get the sort of top layers extracted. So it's, I think it said something like not very long. It won't last very long. Are you able to say a little bit more about, so that field area, what will that look like over the first sort of, I guess, 5 years of this expansion? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So the very first thing that we do is bolster the tree belt along the road, but trees don't grow overnight. We then put a soil bund, small soil bund just inside that. And then as a period of 5 years is probably the answer to your question. We will strip, we call it a strip when we take the overburden off. We'll do one on day one, and we'll put that onto the other side of the quarry. That's where we're going to try and recreate the bit of the hillside. And the second one, if production goes the way it does at the moment, will be about
Who was just speaking?
5 years.
I can't hear anyone.
Oh, okay. I'm having hallucinations.
Oh.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I can't hear anyone.
I can see the room now, and I thought I heard something, but.
Can someone speak so we can make sure that...
Councillor Monique and Councillor Mattis-Quayle, can you actually hear us?
Yeah, now we can.
Now we can.
So you can hear me speaking? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did you lose sound?
We could hear each other, but not you.
No. Neither the room.
Okay, what I think we'll do is, Councillor Mumford, would you like to re-ask your question? And if you wouldn't mind re-answering the question, just so we've made sure that we have fulfilled our obligation and so that our colleagues online could actually catch up.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I was wanting some more information on what was referenced in the video there about the section of land that isn't the actual extraction site, but is leading up to the road, and what in practice that looks like over the next few years. Thanks.
You need to put the microphone on.
The first thing is that we bolster the existing tree belt, which is a single line at the moment along the main road. And then we build a small bund inside. We then do the first exercise of removing overburden, and we have to store some more soil. 5 years later, for that period, it's occupied by soil bunds, which we put grass on. Somebody asked earlier about erosion, and that's why we grass them, so that they don't erode while they sit there. And then at the end of the 5 years, we'll probably be ready for our final strip. And this is a good thing, because most hard rock quarries, you don't do any restoration until the end. That's just their nature. But here, we're able to restore all of that area. In fact, about 5 years. It could be 6, it could be 7. It depends how many tons of rock we sell that year to get to that stage. But it's something like that. And at that point, we then grass all of the internal slope using the species rich grassland, and all of the buns are away, and we're able to plant with broadleaf species in between. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Manikin.
Thank you. Apologies, I think you did answer this one already, but I'm just double checking. When you're putting the grass on the buns, is that going to be not a monoculture, it's a variety of native grass species and so on?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we'll try to do. Certainly go for species rich and local. If we can get seeds of local provenance, so much the better. But it is one of the good opportunities you have in quarries is that you have essentially a low nutrient environment, and we try to take advantage of that with the habitat that we get back.
Okay, is there any further questions from committee? No? Okay, so thank you very much indeed. Okay, so moving back to clarification from officers. I will kick it off. We noted that Councillor Gardner suggested the fact of an informative. I would like to give officers a chance to respond to that suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I think just to say that we wouldn't suggest any change to the condition as such, and we wouldn't suggest it as a planning condition. But if members are minded to put an informative to that extent on, then we can look at that and examine it in terms of the appropriateness of council officers attending groups. But I think also the other offer was potentially more information about quarries, which we might be in a position to look at wider now that we are going to dispose of these applications today. It's always been difficult in the run-up that we've been trying to keep a degree of separation, shall we say, in terms of our assessment of applications, but giving you enough information to hopefully make decisions. But the informative's probably acceptable. And I think just the other thing I was just going to raise in case it was forgotten was I couldn't see anything in city plan, the reporter's report in terms of representations on this site. And I would probably concur with, I think, the points the applicants made about, not being contacted. And I think it's kind of fallen between the stools of when we had pre-application discussions with us. It was probably too late on the journey the city plan had made. And I think once you kind of go on that journey, it's very difficult then to introduce new issues or new positions without then leaving yourselves open to judicial review from other parties. So I think that might explain why we were in this unfortunate situation. And I don't know, Elaine, whether you wanted to explain. I think there may be a slight nuance between the previous case policy and this one in terms of NPF.
Yes, thank you, Convener, if that's permitted. I think the previous case you looked at, it was a countryside designation, and there's no countryside designation within National Planning Framework 4. It's purely an Edinburgh Development Plan allocation or designation. Once you get to Greenbelt, we have policies within both the LDP and within NPF4 that relate to Greenbelt. Within EMV 18, so within the local development plan, it doesn't specifically mention any quarries or mineral extraction. It does in paragraph 3.137 state that we should look at the policy in conjunction with the NPF4 policy on greenbelts. So when we look at the NPF4 policy on greenbelts, oops, wrong version of NPF4. Got two copies open. So it says development proposals within a green belt will only be supported if they are for, and there's a selection of criteria, and one of the criteria is mineral operations. So that's the distinct difference between the countryside and the green belt case. A funny little nuance that we've got today.
Okay, so is there any other clarification points to officers? No. So opening up to discussion from committee. Who would like to kick this off? Councillor Mumford.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I'm happy to. Again, I think with all big applications like this, there's always a little bit of conflict which way to go, but I think, and if I try and be consistent in things, and obviously we've had a previous application today which has been looking at encroaching on greenbelt and countryside, but I do feel that this is this has lots of different considerations than that previous application, and I think the NV18 is much more justifiable in this situation. It's not a permanent, irreversible loss, as we've just heard, and we, at the end of all of this, there will be a new natural asset, whether we're calling it a loch or a lake, something, you know, something new being created for the community. And you know, there are other differences as well, as we've heard. There is less objection from the local community. There are differences in operating style, so that's not normally something we look at here when we're looking at planning applications, but it does feel like it is a well-considered application, to my mind, that I do think can balance out those objections around greenbelt and countryside. So I'm currently minded to go with officer recommendations, but I'd be really, really always keen to hear what the rest of the committee are feeling. Thanks.
Councillor Mowat.
Well, to be fully consistent, I'm happy to go with officer recommendations. I think, again, you know, the need for aggregate and the need for materials to build in a city with a growing economy, with a housing crisis, with an identified need for 40,000 new homes in the next the life of the local development plan, hasn't changed since this morning, and therefore my views haven't changed. That, you know, if we have quarries that are local, that can provide that material and can do that, you know, it's a very good principle that you provide your materials as close to the point of use as possible. Therefore, I think, you know, this is an extension of an existing quarry. It's clear that the policy supports that, so I'm happy to support the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Minikin.
Yes, I just wanted to add that I think this is a really excellent application. I had my questions about it, but it really looks like everything that we might have been concerned about has been addressed really proactively by the applicant. So, and it's going to leave something very nice for the community in the future. I would be in agreement.
Councillor Podgson, followed by Councillor Key.
Yes, I just want to particularly positively note the engagement work that has gone on between the applicant and the community that we saw, particularly this morning in the presentations that were made almost joined at the hip. And you know, it makes our jobs, makes my job much easier, that a lot of that pre-work and the ongoing relationship there. So thank you for that.
Councillor Key.
Yeah, for me it's like chalk and cheese from this morning, when this clearly is a relatively small extension with a very deep well to provide 24 years of stone. Also great community engagement as well, and the restoration plan is feasible, which the one this morning I didn't think it was. So I'm very happy to support this.
Okay, is there any further comment from committee? No? Getting the direction of travel committee that we're happy to support this application. The other thing I would just like to add is, does committee want to does committee want to add the informative as suggested earlier? Mr. Devaney, is there a possibility you can possibly read out something?
Yeah, I think I might need a help with the second part. I think the first part, the informative convener was looking at, was that the applicant, in consultation with the Community Council and interested parties, engage with council officers in relation to council officers attending any future liaison group meetings as part of ongoing engagement. That was probably the first informative. The second informative I was struggling a wee bit with, just to get my wording right, but I think that the applicant investigates the potential for future events to provide site visits to officers and elected members to become more familiar with quarrying activities.
Is committee happy? I'm just slightly struggling on the second informative of when that came up. I don't know if I missed something, but I'm not entirely sure about what the purpose behind that one is, considering we have site visits to the quarries.
I don't know, convener, if you want to just transfer it onto the training programme, but I think it was just more to do, I think, with the offer that the applicant had given in terms of, obviously the very useful video they're given to explain. And obviously appreciate that members had not actually been on the site as such, but I had looked at the relationship between the site and, particularly noise sensitive properties, and whether there was an opportunity there, maybe as part of a future training event to have members and officers out to see what quarrying actually involves on site.
I'm more than happy to take that up separately under as a training programme. Yeah. I don't think it's necessary to have it as an added informative for a particular application. Yeah. Is committee happy with that as a suggestion? Okay, so if we can strike the second informative, and we should make things a lot more simple and much cleaner. Okay, so committee, going formal then, I propose the fact that we accept the officer's recommendations with the additional first informative that Mr. Devaney just read out. Are we content and happy to agree that? Agreed. Jamie's just going to run through something.
Just as I mentioned at the start, it was just to check whether there were any queries from members about the withdrawal of item 4.9, which is Murrayfield Sports Bar.
Councillor Mumford.
Thank you. It was just if you could, I suppose, repeat what you said at the start about the reasons for the withdrawal.
I think I'll hand over to planning officers for that.
Thank you. It was just really to seek withdrawal of the item from the agenda. It's on the basis that we've received further information very recently regarding flooding. This has been in the form of a topographical study, which is more accurate than the LIDAR that had been done, and that may have implications in terms of safe access and egress, which was the fundamental issue, which was in the report that had been drafted, and I think the previous appeal decision. And I would like the opportunity, Chief Plan Officer would like the opportunity for our key consultees, i.e. SEPA and flooding, to have had the opportunity to review that and to for us probably to come back with a fresh report for members to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Is there any sense of timescale on that?
I think the case officer's probably getting in touch with the applicant to make them aware, but I think as soon as we can have the matter assessed and a revised potential report drafted, then, by case again on the agenda, it's probably not going to make 14th of May. I think the next available would be 28th, which is what we would try and endeavour to meet. But with all these things, of course, it's always subject to getting the consultations back, getting the report written, and obviously other council business that may be at these forthcoming meetings.
Is there any possibility that we can make sure the fact that then all information is then present and ready? Because obviously we've had a fair bit of backwards and forth over this, etc. So it would be good to make sure, I would prefer the fact that we left it to make sure that we had all the information rather than have another flurry of information. So I'm leaving that obviously up to officers to sort of say, that is now sufficient, we are now done. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Matt, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that, I was going to ask, I presume, because this is subject to further information, that the applicant is happy with this course of action and isn't going to whip in a quick non-determination.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, the applicant has asked that we take it off. There is a potential danger of non-determination, but I think given the circumstances behind this, it's unlikely. I can't rule it out, and I think the case officer is actually trying to seek an extension of time with the applicant, but I don't really think it's in their interest to appeal non-determination. I think what they're really wanting is to assess this additional information. I think just with the timing, with the preparation of these reports, with the Easter break, where they've been kind of produced earlier, it's meant, unfortunately, we haven't had the opportunity to assess that, neither have our colleagues in flooding or colleagues in SEPA.
No further questions from committee on this? If not, thank you all very much indeed for attendance today. See you soon and see some of you tomorrow.
Thank you.